All right. Welcome back to the live show. You know what time it is. It is currently 7:02 a.m. and today's date is the 10th of July 2025. Good morning, America. Good morning, USA. What's going on, y'all? Yes, I haven't gone to bed. Okay. I haven't gone to bed yet. I was going to come here earlier, but I was handling other business. So yeah, I'm here now. Good morning, USA. So the OG, the 45th, now the 47th President of the United States, participated in a multilateral lunch with a couple of African leaders, and it was pretty much insightful and impactful. So we're gonna check that out. This happened about say 12 hours ago. We're gonna check that out real fast. Uh, yeah, that, and we're gonna see what's going on around the cities of the United States, and we're gonna have a conversation. Okay, we're gonna have a conversation. We're gonna have a conversation because a lot is going on. We see what's going on. We see what's going on. We see what's going on. But we're gonna have a conversation about what's going on. Okay. All right, here we go. Don't forget, it doesn't matter if you are a Republican or Democrat or independent. It does not matter. If you are a liberal, conservative, or progressive, it does not matter. What matters the most is you are American. That's the number one thing. You are American and you support the ideology of land of the free and home of the brave. That's what matters. Okay. None of that other distractions matters. Okay. So let's come together, unite, and be one. Okay. Let's be one because this is the United States. Okay. This is not a divided state. This is the United States of America. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, it is your boy Genesis. Welcome to the Genesis Show. Have a good time. Be nice in the chat and enjoy the show.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for being with us today. And I want to thank you, all of these great leaders, for joining us as we welcome to the White House the presidents and prime ministers and various other forms of dignitary to this wonderful place. There's nothing like the White House to me. We're represented today, and your continent is represented by Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania, and Senegal, all very vibrant places with very valuable land, great minerals, great oil deposits, and wonderful people. Last month, the U.S.-Africa Business Summit had recorded an attendance record, actually, and generated $2.5 billion in new economic deals for the United States. On June 27th, the foreign ministers of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda visited the White House to sign a historic peace agreement that we worked out. They've been fighting for 30 years. 7 million are dead, and they think the number is actually quite a bit higher than that. It's been a long and vicious fight, and I just wanted to say that the countries represented were very happy that we were able to solve that problem. I think over the next couple of weeks, the leaders of both countries will come to sign the final agreement. As you know, we had foreign ministers last week, but we're going to be signing an end to the horrible 30-year war. It's been going on for a long time. I've been reading about it, hearing about it, and it was a vicious war. It was a terrible war. I want to thank our outstanding senior advisor for Africa, Masad Boulos, for helping to mediate this breakthrough. He was very much involved in that settlement. Most people thought it couldn't be done. but there's still much more to be done, and we're going to be facilitating peace also in places like Sudan, where they have a lot of problems, Libya and others. We have there's a lot of anger on your continent, and we've been able to solve a lot of it. My administration is committed to strengthening our friendships in Africa through economic development efforts that benefit both the United States and our partners. And we're shifting from AID to trade. We had AID, or aid as we sometimes call it, right to trade. And trade seems to be a foundation that I've been able to settle a lot of these disputes, like as an example, India and Pakistan, Kosovo, Serbia. I said, you guys are going to fight, we're not going to trade. And we seem to be quite successful in doing that. To that end, we have closed the USAID group to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, which was tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse. And we're working tirelessly to forge new economic opportunities involving both the United States and many African nations. There's great economic potential in Africa, like few other places in many ways. In the long run, this will be far more effective and sustainable and beneficial than anything else that we can be doing together. I'm eager to work with each of you on your vital issues and also to discuss security. We've encouraged our staff at the White House to work along with these nations. There's such tremendous wealth there and potential there. We encourage the countries here today to make greater investments in defense, hopefully, of course, buying our equipment, because we do make the best defense equipment. I guess we proved that about 2 weeks ago in Iran, but we make the best equipment, best military equipment anywhere in the world by far. There's nobody close. And keep pursuing the fight against terrorism, which is a big problem in Africa. Immigration will also be on the agenda, and I hope we can bring down the high rates of people overstaying visas and also make progress on the safe third country agreements. And once again, I want to thank you all for being here, and it's an honor for me. Some of you I've met, and some of you I just got to meet, and I think it would be nice if you said a few words to the press, which is right back here. Do we have a camera over here? It'd be nice if you could, oh, there it is. You could speak to the, you don't want to turn your head so much. I do it a lot. It's not pleasant. But perhaps we could start with you, please. Thank you very much. Great gentleman, by the way.
Merci pour m'avoir donné la parole, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you for giving me the floor, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to thank you, Mr. President Trump, for inviting us to come here today. I'm President Ghazouani, President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. Thank you, Mr. President, for this invitation and the invitation you sent to the other colleagues present here today. This is a very strong message from you, and we are receiving this message very well. This is a message of interest that you're sending to us, and it's a message that you're sending to the whole of Africa. All of this is generous on your part. We are receiving this, and we accept this message from you. Before I talk about my country, I would like to let you know that we are delighted to see President Trump's commitment to our continent. Mr. President, in the short time you've been back in office, the last few months, you came to the rescue for peace. You did it in Asia with Pakistan and India. The war sort of started, and if it had gone on the consequences could have been a real disaster. Since the beginning, you've been doing a great deal of work on the war in Europe, that is the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. You rushed to Africa to resolve a long-standing problem. Lots of efforts had been made by many heads of states, but your will made it possible for this agreement to be signed. And now, this conflict is behind us. You are currently working with a great deal of enthusiasm. And you're also working on the Middle East. You're paying a great deal of attention to the Middle East. We all know how far back this conflict goes. It is a conflict that is about 80 years old. 70 years, but it is also a war that has been raging for a year and a half. And you've also talked about the human toll. Many people have died in this conflict. Of course, you also stopped the war between Iran and Israel. That could have been a real disaster for the region. It's a sensitive region to start with. Your work in favor of peace has been tremendous, and we are also very interested in supporting peace in the same way. When there's no peace, like you said earlier today, when there is no peace, a lot of other things are lacking. When there's no peace, it is difficult to have prosperity. It is difficult to have calm, to have a sense of quietness. It's hard to sleep. It's hard to go about your business every day. You understand that well, Mr. President, and you're working on this. So thank you.
Moi, je suis président.
I am the president of Mauritania. Mauritania is a small country. Depending on the criteria you apply. If you look at the number of people who live in Mauritania, it's a small country because we have about 5 million people in Mauritania. We might just be a little bit over 5 million. It's a small country also in the sense that what influence it has throughout the world. It's not like the US, Mr. President. Internationally, we understand that our weight, our influence is not that great, and we have no complex about this. It's also a small country because of our level of prosperity. We're not a very prosperous country. We have many problems related to the well-being of our population. But it is also a great country, a big country in other ways. Mauritania is a great country in the sense of its strategic position. It is on the Atlantic coast, which makes it a neighbor to the US. It is what unites North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, or what links the two. That is its strategic position, but also in terms of resources. We have a great deal of resources, many, many resources, and we have a lot of opportunities to offer in terms of investment. We have minerals, rare earths, rare minerals. We have manganese. We have uranium. And we have a good inclination that we have lithium and other minerals. We're the second largest producer for the last 60 years in Africa of iron ore. We produce a lot. And we have a lot of resources in our seawaters, so lots of fishing and whatnot. I don't want to spend too much time on this.
But I appreciate it very much. I appreciate it. Maybe we're going to have to go a little bit quicker than this because we have a whole schedule. If I could just say it's, your name and your country would be great. Thank you, please.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Presidente Trump, e sobretudo.
Thank you, Mr. President, and for welcome and everything. For us, it's the second time here to come as a guest. The first time we had that meeting in Guinea-Bissau, but I will not talk so much. But Guinea-Bissau is a peaceful country, and we are a small country, but we are a great state. Not a great state like the United States, but we are a great country as well. And to end, we are be following your dynamics and the war with Russia and Ukraine. And you can count on Guinea-Bissau. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, let me congratulate you for your recent celebration of your 249th anniversary. We did in Liberia at your embassy. Mr. President, we thank you for this opportunity to be here. Liberia is a longtime friend of the United States, and we believe in your policy of making America great again. And we also go a long way with you in your diplomacy that has to do with economic development and commercial friendship. Liberia has a lot of minerals. And one of the things we ask as good friends for a long time is the opportunity to do a survey of our minerals. Mm-hmm. And also we are committed to peace, and we've been very lucky within our region. We are a country that have had a series of democratic elections, and our country had been cooling down. And also, we want to encourage American involvement in the investment in Liberia. Yeah. We'd like to see that happen. We want to work with the United States in peace and security within the region because we are committed to that. And we just want to thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. And such good English, such beautiful. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully? Where were you educated? Where?
Yes, sir.
In Liberia.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's very interesting. It's beautiful English.
Sure.
I have people at this table can't speak nearly as well,
Very
and
good, sir.
they come from here. So thank you very much. Please. There you go. Thank you. Very good.
Hello? Hello?
I think that was the news. They turned it off on purpose.
Mr. President Trump, it's a great pleasure to meet a great American homologue président africain. Je voudrais avant tout remercier ici officiellement le président Trump pour cette visite de travail, d'amitié entre nos différents pays. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, le président Trump vous fait la fierté du peuple américain. C'est la fierté du monde entier. Dans plusieurs domaines, le domaine économique, le domaine politique et au niveau diplomatique. Je salue les efforts.
Yeah, just press that. There you go.
Yes.
I would like to commend you, Mr. President, for the success you had in reaching a peace agreement between Rwanda and the DRC. Africa is a vast continent that has many problems, and we truly count on you for your assistance in Sudan and in the Sahel, because no investment can be made when there is a war. For investment, you need peace. The other heads of state who are here with me represent countries that are at peace, and that has been the case for some time. When we also have raw materials, minerals, rare earths. We are not poor countries. We are rich countries when it comes to raw materials, but we need partners to support us and help us develop those resources with win-win partnerships. That is our wish. I often listen to your remarks and speeches, Mr. President. We also want our raw materials to be processed locally in our country so that we can create value and to create jobs for youth so that they stop dying. They are crossing the sea, the ocean, to go to other countries. That is what we want, to have local processing of raw materials. Gabon is a rich country. We have over 2 million inhabitants and a great deal of diversity, raw materials, oil and gas reserves. And we would like those resources to be tapped using an economic model that fits. Since our liberation, we have changed how we do trade. We've focused on transparency and bids for anyone who wants to come invest in our country. If you follow the news, we have also worked on agreements with the European Union, and we wanted to review those because we didn't think that those were win-win opportunities. So our market is open. We want to process manganese locally, which you purchase through a company called Aramet. And I'm sure that it's more expensive compared to when you can come and buy it directly from us. In order to do this local processing, we need 8 to 10 gigawatts of electricity. Again, this is an open bid. Any American company that wants to invest in electricity in Gabon is welcome to take advantage of that opportunity. Now, looking at defense, the Gulf of Guinea is an issue. There is maritime piracy in that area, and we want to work together to stabilize it. You said you had the best equipment, the best military equipment, and that's what we'd like to have so that we can stop maritime piracy in the Gulf of Guinea. We can't do it alone. We need a reliable and strong partner that is committed and that takes real steps, real action. We also need to be pragmatic, and that's what you are. And I'm a general, and I am too. I'm pragmatic. I like it when things move quickly. Our country is free, open to one and all. You are welcome to come and invest. Otherwise, other countries might come instead of you. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I would like to thank you for this invitation. It is an honor for us to be here at the White House and to have this opportunity to speak with you about the new partnership that you are putting in place with Africa, particularly for investment. I also wanted to commend you for your commitment to peace throughout the world and the incredible diplomatic success that you had with the DRC, as my colleagues mentioned. You said that this put an end to a long war that claimed many lives, and thankfully, you were here to put an end to this 30-year war. I also wanted to express that Africa supports all efforts to bring back peace to Sudan, Libya, and in the Sahel. Mr. President, as you've seen, you can only do business when there is peace and security, and you build peace everywhere in the world so that there can be better investments. The entire world is grateful to you for this. Now, with respect to my country, Senegal, I've been president for some 15, 16 months now, and I want to reassure all American investors about our country's political stability and our favorable regulatory environment, which we are continuously improving upon in order to attract more investment. I wanted to speak about two projects that I think are an exceptional opportunity. I will speak about the U.S. Ecological Survey, which can help assess the potential of the minerals in our country. And thanks to American companies, we've been able to discover oil and gas. Some 950 billion cubic meters of gas that we can tap into in order to support our economy. And again, here we were able to do this with an American company. Another project I'd like to mention, and again, I would like to invite American investors to take part in this. It's for a digital city. We identified a space within the city of Dakar. It has a view of the sea. It's on some 40 hectares, and this is a great opportunity for American tech companies to come in and make Dakar a tech city open to Africa. I was wondering what your secret was for resolving all these complex crises, and I know you are a tremendous golf player. Golf requires concentration and precision, qualities that also make for a great leader. Senegal has exceptional opportunities to offer, including in the area of tourism. So perhaps an investment could be made in a golf course in Senegal. It would just be 6 hours by flight from New York, from Miami, from Europe, or from the Gulf, and that would be an opportunity for you to show off your skills on the golf course too. Thank you for your attention, sir.
Nice. It's some way to show off my skills. It's a long trip to show off my skill, but that's really nice. And he's led a very interesting life. He looks like a very young person. He's a little older than he looks, but a fantastic job. He was treated very unfairly by his government, and he prevailed. And so congratulations on that. Really, congratulations. It was a great job. And you've all done a fantastic job. And so we'll be talking to you as we have the meal. Do you want to ask any questions, please? Where's my reporter from Africa? There you are. How are you? She's very famous in Africa, see?
Thank you. Miss, I have one question for the African presidents and one question for President Trump. As you can see, Mr. President Trump, all the African presidents are very happy with your efforts to bring peace in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. My question to you is, today you are making history by receiving 5 African presidents and showing the interest of the United States to collaborate and to work close with the African nations. African continent is watching, African youth is watching, and this new approach that your administration is taking to deal with African nations, not only based on help, but in doing business that everybody can win, is really much appreciated for all the Africans. My question is, are you planning, Mr. President, in the future to travel to Africa to see firsthand all those countries in Africa, all those potential that those countries have? And for the African leaders, my question is, as you can see, President Trump is working to bring peace not only in Africa but also in the world. Are you all considering to nominate President Trump for a Nobel Prize Peace?
That's a very nice reporter. I got to meet her 2 weeks ago when we had the Congo and Rwanda, and we had some other people up from Africa, and that was the first time. But that's a very nice, I appreciate the questions. Very nice, actually. Would you like to, at some point I would like to go to Africa, absolutely. We're going to see what the schedule is, but at some point I would like to do that very much. Would you like to give a fast answer, please?
Thank you very much.
Microphone, please.
Please.
Of course, on soutient cette dynamique pour.
We are in favor of this dynamic for peace. We are very committed on peace. I am the first head of state who went to Russia and who went to Ukraine, both, since the start of the war. I held the presidency of ECOWAS, and I went to see Mr. Putin. We spoke for 4 hours, and then I went to Ukraine. I spent 12 hours on a train to speak to President Zelensky. But now the weight of President Trump is something else altogether. We are with you. We are behind you to see what we can do to help bring peace back. No one wins when there's war. So you have our support so that we can bring peace back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President Trump. Thank you for your questions. A Nobel Peace Prize, while I don't see any problem with it, I think that President Trump deserves it for all the efforts that he's worked on. And he brought peace back in the SEAC region. That is my region, the region where DRC and Rwanda signed a deal. And so he is now bringing peace back into a region where that was never possible. So I believe that he does deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. That is my opinion on this.
Well, thank you very much. Very nice. Thank you. I didn't know I'd be treated this nicely. This is great. We could do this all day long. Thank you very much. Please, go ahead.
Mr. President, I believe that we have to continue to support America in the strength to be able to bring about peace in the world. America is a melting point and also a country that we all look forward to. And I want to encourage you, because without peace, we can't have a world to live in. And we stand with you on that.
That's right. Thank you. Well said. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your question. Very important question indeed. Forgive me for saying this, but unfortunately, I don't really understand. I don't know how things work when it comes to Nobel Prizes, but I can guarantee you that Mauritania would never be opposed to President Trump receiving a Nobel Peace Prize, because he's already working very hard in favor of peace throughout the world, with no distinction, no regard to what continent it's on, and he's working on areas where there are tensions everywhere, and he's committed towards peace, and our world needs more peace. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The jury will decide. It's not a matter of voting amongst our countries, but what is for sure is that the results and the work has been done in such a short amount of time show that you would be a good recipient. And I'm sure that the jury sees that, and the rest of the world sees it as well and understands it. When the time comes, I think everyone will see that it is a deserved prize. Congratulations on what you've done so far. If we took a poll, I think you would be very far ahead in those polls.
It's very nice. All of you, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Peter?
Thank you, President Trump. James Comey and John Brennan, now under criminal investigation related to the Trump-Russia probe. Do you want to see these two guys behind bars?
Well, I know nothing about it other than what I read today, but I will tell you, I think they're very dishonest people. I think they're crooked as hell, and maybe they have to pay a price for that. I believe they are truly bad people and dishonest people, so whatever happens, happens.
And now, a few weeks after the strikes that you ordered on the nuclear facilities in Iran, there is an Iranian official who says you, President Trump, have done something that he can no longer sunbathe in Mar-a-Lago. As you lie there with your stomach to the sun, a small drone might hit you in the navel. It's very simple. Do you think that's a real threat? And when is the last time you went sunbathing anyway?
It's been a long time. It's been a long time. I don't know. Maybe I was around 7 or so. I'm not too big into it. Yeah, I guess it's a threat. I'm not sure it's a threat, actually, but perhaps it is.
And on one other subject, two Democratic senators now, Cory Booker and Alex Padilla, have a new bill out. They want to require CBP and ICE officers to have legible IDs, and they don't want CBP or ICE officers covering their faces. Would you ever sign that?
Well, they wouldn't be saying that if they didn't hate our country, and they obviously do. I'm surprised that they would do it, knowing a little bit about them. I don't know them well, but these officers are doing a tremendous job. They're great patriots. If you expose them because of statements like have been made by Democrats and others on the left, usually, mostly, I think probably exclusively, you put them in great danger, tremendous danger. And it's sort of funny when people picket in front of Columbia, in front of Harvard, and they have masks on, more than masks. I mean, you can't see anything. Nobody complains about that. But when a patriot who works for ICE or Border Patrol puts a mask on so that they won't recognize him and his family, so they can lead a little bit of a normal life after having worked so hard and so dangerously, there's a problem with that. So they have this is the problem with the Democrats. They have a lot of bad things going on in their heads. They've really become they've lost their confidence, number one, and they've become somewhat deranged. I want to do whatever's necessary to protect our great law enforcement people, and they are right at the top of the list.
And your agriculture department also announced this week that they are going to start limiting Chinese ownership of American farmland. Why do you think that the Chinese have been buying up all this farmland in our country so close to military installations?
Well, I don't want to get into that. I have a very good relationship with President Xi. We're going to see, and I'm going to, they're going to be making a recommendation to me, but we have a very good relationship. As you know, they're paying a lot of tariffs to the United States now, and So I'm not going to get into that right now. Yeah, please.
Yesterday, the Wall Street Journal reported that the White House was weighing whether to send another Patriot air defense system to Ukraine. Can you confirm that reporting?
They would like it. They've asked for it. They're very rare indeed, because a lot of systems have been sent to Ukraine. But they would like to. I know they made the request. We're going to have to take a look at it. It's very expensive system. It's a shame that we have to spend so much money on a war that would have never happened if I were president. That's a terrible, terrible war over there, and it's really a shame. It's very sad. When you talk about a system like that, highly sophisticated, tremendous amount of money, and they're doing it because they want to prevent death. They're getting hit hard, very hard. So we're looking at it.
Also on Russia.
Yesterday, sir, as well, Ukraine was hit by over 700 drones sent by Russia last night. What's your response to that attack?
Well, I've been sort of letting people know I'm not happy about what's going on. It's a war that should have never happened. It should not happen now. They're losing. Now it's up. I've been saying 5,000. Now it's up to 7,000. Think of it, 7,000 people a week on both sides. 7,000 people, young, mostly military people, young souls are dead and dying, and it should be stopped. It should be stopped. Very sad to see what's happening. Yes, please.
Sir, can you explain how you calculated your latest round of tariffs? Was there a formula that was used? And do you expect any of these countries to face tariffs as well?
The formula was a formula based on common sense, based on deficits, based on how we've been treated over the years, and based on raw numbers. And we're going to have a couple of more coming out today. Brazil, as an example, has been not good to us, not good at all. We're going to be releasing a Brazil number, I think, later on this afternoon or tomorrow morning. But they're based on very substantial facts and also past history. You look at the past history. We never had anybody in the White House that understood the numbers or were into it like I have. We've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, hundreds of billions, and we haven't even started yet. And it's going to be a great thing for our country. And I think it's going to be a fair thing for the world. And we really haven't had too many complaints because I'm keeping them at a very low number, very conservative, as you would say, number. And we haven't had, I'm sure they will be complaining at certain points, but we haven't had complaints. We've been treated very unfairly by both friend and foe. And friend has treated us very badly. It's not even believable that for so many years, I was using tariffs in my first administration. We had the most successful financially administration that there's ever been. This is going to be much better. But we got cut short with the COVID because I didn't think it was appropriate when, Italy, Spain, so the horror show that a lot of the countries went through. So I cut it a little bit short. But we took in hundreds of billions of dollars, and we had the most successful term ever from a president financially. But this is going to be much more successful. Yes, please.
Do you expect any of the countries here to face tariffs as well?
I haven't thought of it, but I don't know. Let's see, I like him, and him. No, I don't think so, not too much. He's very good. He's a friend of mine now. Yes,
Thank you for taking our questions, Mr. President.
Okay.
You talked about the amount of external revenue the country has brought in thanks to your tariffs. Can you talk about how these hundreds of billions of dollars that are getting brought in will help grow the country, and what do you hope to put it towards?
Well, bigger than the tariffs, actually, are the fact that when you charge the tariffs at a certain point, they say, well, we can't pay those tariffs. It doesn't make economic sense. These are wealthy countries, and they or their companies will come into our country and build, and that's what's actually happening. If you had a very low tariff, there'd be no incentive to do that. If you have no tariff, like we used to have, which is so stupid, it's not even believable, but then obviously they make their product, the product in their country. They have the jobs, they have the income, they have the taxes, they have everything, and they just send it into us, and it's jobs that we wouldn't get. Now the wheel is turned. And what we're doing is more important, we're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars, money that we've never seen before. But more important than that, we have a lot of people that would rather not have to pay that. So they're coming in and they're building plants. AI, I mean, we're leading everybody, including China, by a lot with AI. They're building their own plant. You heard me say yesterday, they're building their own electric generating plants to go along with the factories or plants that they're building. If they want to do that, we're getting them fast approvals, very fast turnarounds. They're using mostly natural gas to start off, but they're using coal. They have the right to use coal. They have the right to use nuclear. Nuclear has come a long way in the last 5 years. So we're getting them very fast approvals. We have factories and plants building at a level that we've never had in this country before. Yeah.
And secondly, a study from the Council of Economic Advisors. You put it on Truth Social yesterday. It showed that your assessment that tariffs would slow inflation was accurate and that the prices of imported goods since February has fallen. That your assessment was right, the critics were wrong. Why do so-called experts continually misread your economic policy, sir?
Well, it's not the experts. It's the fake news and a combination of that and the Democrats. I saw an ad on television today on Fox. And it was some ad about, oh, Trump has raised costs. It's the opposite. I actually put out a statement. I brought down costs. I brought down the cost of groceries. I brought down the cost of energy, tremendously groceries. If you remember my first week in office, the press was screaming at me about the cost of eggs. They were 4 times higher than they were just a short time ago. That was caused by Biden and stupid policies, and we got that down. And by Easter, it was normalized, and now it's actually even at a lower price. So when I see an ad like that, it's always good to respond. I feel you have to respond. It was an ad that things are more costly. No, they're much less costly. Yesterday, $1.99 a gallon. There's 3 states were selling gasoline at $1.99. You haven't seen that for a long time. And I brought costs way down, just about every cost. I can't think of a cost that went up, but just about every cost. So what they do is they lie. I mean, they take ads. You'd almost think that the advertising station would stop it because they know it's wrong. It's such a lie. All you can do is say it's a lie and explain it. I guess I have the ability to explain it at conferences like this, so I like to take advantage of it and do it. But costs are substantially down under the Trump administration. And as you know, Biden had the highest inflation, I believe, in the history of our country. They say 48 years, but regardless, I think it was really the highest in the history of our country. And they were up to numbers that nobody ever saw before. And we have inflation now totally under control. We have a Fed chairman that if he was doing his job properly would lower interest rates, but we're bullying through even that. We're doing so well, it's not having that kind of an impact on us. But you want to see a rocket ship? We should have the lowest interest rates because without us, there's nothing. And we have a strong country now, and we're taking in a lot of money. And other countries aren't even complaining. They got away with murder. They took advantage of a lot of very stupid people that sat in the seat. Very stupid people, or people that didn't understand business or something was going on. But hard to believe that they got away with it for so many years. But now, and I'm treating them very fairly. Again, we have countries with tremendous deficits with us where we have, where we essentially lose a lot of money. And we are changing that around very rapidly. And I think it's about time somebody did it.
Sir, President?
Yeah, please.
Sir, yesterday you said that you were not sure who ordered the munitions halted to Ukraine. Have you since been able to figure that out?
Well, I haven't thought about it because we're looking at Ukraine right now and munitions, but I have not gone into it.
What does it say that such a big decision could be made inside your government without you knowing?
I would know. If a decision was made, I will know. I'll be the first to know. In fact, most likely I'd give the order, but I haven't done that yet. Yeah, please.
Can I ask how your meeting with Netanyahu went over the last couple of days, and how realistic do you think a ceasefire is this week?
Well, we're talking about Gaza for the most part. I think we have a chance this week or next week. Not definitely. There's nothing definite about war and Gaza and all of the other places that we all deal with so much. But there's a very good chance that we'll have a settlement, an agreement of some kind this week, and maybe next week if not.
On Africa as well, African Growth and Opportunity Act, which has been central to many sub-Saharan countries having access to the U.S. market, that's due to expire in September. Are you hoping to extend that beyond it?
Well, we'll take a look at that. Yes, please.
Thank you. That's up to Congress to take a first crack at. We know that program's been in place for about 20 years, and at the end result of that, we see a lot of other countries operating in Africa. We still see a lot of tariff and non-tariff barriers in Africa. So I think any discussion about that act would also have to think about how we address those kinds of barriers.
Yeah, Peter.
President Trump, in Alvarado, Texas, a few days ago, 10 people wearing all black allegedly set off fireworks outside an ICE office to lure the officers out so they could ambush them, shoot at them. They had guns and vests and two-way radios. Do you think that this was an isolated incident, or do you think there's a national threat of a left-wing militia that is targeting ICE and CBP?
Well, I think you have some very stupid people in the left who have some money that are making it available to these people, because you look at the guns they had, they were brand new. You look at even the clothing they were wearing, it looked like it just came out of some military shop. So you have some very stupid people that if anything ever happened, they'd be the first to go. They don't understand that. They'd be the first to go. They'd be the first ones hit. But there is money being put behind people. When you look at the weapons they have, the newness of the weapons, rifles that just came out and they have the latest model. So there's something going on, and we'll get to the bottom of it.
And what do you think the penalty should be for these people who are, if they are found guilty, for people
Very
who
stiff.
shoot at ICE officers?
Very, very stiff. Very stiff. A long time in jail, a long time. And one got hit yesterday in the neck, and he fortunately is going to be okay, but he got hit yesterday in the neck. No good.
And what would you think if I read you a quote from a lawmaker who says about ICE, to abolish it, to treat them as criminals or anything that is inappropriate and outrageous? And I told you that that was Democrat John Fetterman.
Wow. It's, by the way, I assume when you read that, because you paused in the middle, you're going to have to read that again without the pause. Could you read that again, please?
To abolish it, to treat them as criminals or anything that's inappropriate and outrageous.
So he's saying that to treat the people that did the shooting is... Oh, okay, good. Because the way you read it, it really was the opposite. But that's okay. That's all right. I think that's what he meant. No, the new John Fetterman is exactly what you said. He's right. He's right. And we have to protect our police officers, and we will. And we have been. If you saw the stats released by the FBI the other day, the murder rate's way down, the lowest it's been in a long time, and that took place over the last 6 months. For the last 6 months, murder, it's a hell of a subject to have to talk about, but murder is way down at almost getting to be modern-day records. So that's despite the fact that we have a lot of people that came into the country that shouldn't be here.
Mr. President?
Yes, please.
So two questions, one on tariffs, the other on the IRS. On tariffs, China is reportedly softening their impact on U.S. tariffs in Africa, announcing last month that they would halt charges on imports for nearly all of its African partners.
Good.
Does this move by China influence your thinking, your approach to tariffs on the continent?
Well, we treat Africa great in many different ways, including with tariffs. But, parts of Africa charge us tremendous tariffs, as you know. And they're going to be dropping those tariffs. They've already informed me they're going to be dropping those tariffs. But we treat Africa far better than China or anybody else, anyplace else. Yeah.
And on the IRS says that churches can now endorse political candidates. What's your reaction to this, and how do you expect this to influence some of the work that's afoot on the continent? There's a lot of American churches that are missionaries doing missionary work on the continent. Do you support that?
I love the fact that churches can endorse a political candidate. I think so, because we have a lot of respect for the people that lead the church, for the pastors and the ministers and the rabbis and the all different leaders, all different religions, and people respect those people. And I think there's nothing wrong. It was a very big penalty if that took place just a little while ago. They had a thing called the Johnson Act, and it was a very big penalty. I think it's great if a pastor, minister, priest, rabbi, and we could very much go into your religion, by the way, which is something that people are having great respect for throughout the world. If somebody of faith wants to endorse, I think it's something that I'd like to hear, and I can guarantee you, the people that they're with every Saturday or Sunday, or whenever it is they're with, they want to hear from these people, and it was a very severe penalty. Those people were not allowed to speak up. Now they're allowed to speak up. No, I think it's terrific.
Mr. President, your administration took new actions against Harvard University today. Are you still optimistic about reaching a deal with the university?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Harvard's been very bad, totally anti-Semitic, and yeah, they'll absolutely reach a deal. Peter?
I just got a text from our colleague John Roberts. He says that we are now reporting the guy who was arrested in the Alvarado, Texas incident for tampering with the evidence was a green card recipient under the Biden administration and a prior DACA recipient. What do you think of that?
It's very sad. It's very bad. A lot of them are here. We came in 21 million. I think it's higher than that, by the way, but they say 21 million people came in. Many of them are criminals. Many of them are murderers. 11,888 is what they say are murderers. And they came in through open border policies, no checking, no vetting, no nothing. And we have a lot of that. And despite that, we have crime down, which is pretty amazing.
And this is a
And
long
say hello
meeting,
to
so
John. Say hello to John Roberts.
I will. I'm sure he's watching this right now. A lot of news has broken since we've been in here. Axios says a secret White House meeting between Steve Witkoff, Ron Dermer, and a Qatari envoy on Tuesday led to significant progress in the negotiations over the Gaza hostage and ceasefire deal. What can you tell us about this
It's
secret
very possible.
meeting?
I will tell you we're getting very close to a deal. I don't know if it's secret or not secret, but it doesn't matter to me. Secret's fine if it gets us to where we want to be. We want to have a ceasefire. We want to have peace. We want to get the hostages back. And I think we're close to doing it. Okay? Thank you all very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, President Trump.
Thank you.
Well, this is what everybody voted for. I'll tell you that much. 77.3 million people voted for this guy. His transparency is beyond recognition. Like, everybody needs to understand this guy is very transparent. He takes the press everywhere he goes. Air Force One, out of the country, anywhere he goes, the press goes, and they ask him loads of questions. But the one thing that I'm so unsatisfied about is this new situation here, the Epstein files. Okay, so Pam Bundy said, she has some evidence on her desk. Same thing with Kash Patel and Don Bongino. However, those guys said that they were looking through every single thing that they needed to look through. And of course, you don't want to just show names or reveal names that are not supposed to be revealed because, you got to protect, for example, kids. And now Pam Bundy said most of the things that they saw were, children doing explicit stuff. And of course, I don't want to see those things. However, it's like, who were the people involved, though? People want to know the people involved. So nobody wants to see children doing explicit stuff. Nobody wants to see that kind of stuff. But people are interested in the people who are involved in those types of situations. But anyway, let's check out CNN here. Like I always say, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican, Democrat, independent, conservative, progressive, liberal, it does not matter. The most important thing here is you are an American. That's what matters the most. So stop the dividing and the division.
How can people be expected to have faith in Trump?
Okay, stop dividing. This is the United States of America. This is not the divided state of America. Here we go.
If he won't release the Epstein files. That post by Elon Musk this afternoon gets at a serious question, prompted by MAGA fans, among others, after the Justice Department asserted in a memo that convicted sex offender and multimillionaire Jeffrey Epstein did not blackmail high-profile clients, was not murdered before he was found dead in his jail cell in 2019, and in fact had no client list. Despite the fact that the very same administration officials are now asserting there is no there, many of them were the ones ginning up the controversy before President Trump was reelected and while they were in office. The Justice Department memo, first obtained by Axios, also comes 1 month after the billionaire Tesla founder took to his platform X as his alliance with President Trump dissolved. Quote, "Time to drop the really big bomb. Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason why they have not been made public," unquote. Musk deleted that post 2 days later, but the new memo has Musk posting this meme, among others. It's a guy putting on progressively more clown makeup with the text, "We will release the Epstein list. We just need more time. The Epstein list is on my desk." There is no Epstein list, with full clown regalia. The desk part refers to a February clip. The list is on my desk. A February clip from Fox that was played of Pam Bondi. Take a listen.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump.
But here was Attorney General Bondi earlier today.
I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that.
Trump was asked about the memo today by a New York Post reporter, and he expressed indignation.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
Mr. President, the reason people are talking about this guy is because people serving in the highest levels of your administration have been talking about this guy for years and talking about how the Epstein list needs to be released. Here's then Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance in October 2024.
Everybody in politics has a vice that's much worse than alcoholism, is the way that I put it. But we
release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
Here's Kash Patel on a podcast just over a year before he became FBI director.
Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
Dan Bongino, a former Secret Service agent turned right-wing podcaster, is now the FBI deputy director. Here he is on his show in February. He was named deputy director just a few weeks later.
I'm not ever going to let this story go because of what I heard from a source about Bill Clinton on a plane with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not letting it go, ever. Ever.
Bill Clinton's spokesperson released a statement in 2019 saying that the former president, quote, knows nothing about the terrible crimes. We should note the presence of one's name in the files does not mean they were involved in any way in sex trafficking or having sex with any of Epstein's victims. Here's Alina Habba, now interim U.S. attorney for New Jersey. This is her in February.
In this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking.
I'm shocked that none of that's been released. In February this year, Attorney General Bondi teased the imminent arrival of the Epstein files, and President Trump's eldest son, Don Jr., posted about the news, quote, LFG, an acronym for Let's Effing Go. A week later, the Trump administration invited a slew of conservative MAGA influencers to the White House, purporting to give them a first look at a batch of documents labeled the Epstein files, phase 1, but none of it was a smoking gun. The vast majority of the information had already been made publicly available. CNN's Evan Perez reported in March that Attorney General Bondi directed FBI agents, in some cases, to drop their work on China and Iran and focus on redacting the files before their release. Remember, Trump made part of this his platform. Here he is during the 2024 campaign.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world.
So what's really going on here? I mean, what's really going on? Well, experts, such as our friend Julie Brown from the Miami Herald, who's been covering Epstein for years, say that the notion of Epstein having an easy-to-access client list is likely a red herring. And that's what the Trump administration is relying on, that there likely isn't a list per se. But they are also now relying on the fact that because it's MAGA influencers who often put forward so many falsehoods, legacy news media won't push the point, that while there might not be a list, there are certainly files that can be released. There's a trove of information that the Trump administration is right now refusing to share. Information that could well point to the powerful folks who availed themselves of the sex trafficking victims of Jeffrey Epstein. If you go, for example, to the FBI vault online, you can see that there are 22 files containing thousands of pages. Most of them are heavily redacted. Now, sure, of course, redact the names and identifying characteristics of the victims. But why not make the victim and testimonies public? As Julie Brown points out, there's still so much we don't know from the investigations by U.S. attorneys in Miami and in New York, witness interviews in the U.S. Virgin Islands and New Mexico. Brown writes that there's still more evidence that hasn't been published, including, quote, Epstein kept video cameras in most of his residences, and Epstein's autopsy, nor the report of the investigation into his death, has been made public. So while there may not be an official client list to be released, as the administration is now saying, there's a lot of extra information that is not being made public, despite Trump's Justice Department basically now saying case closed. This isn't going to go away.
And Pam Bondi went on television and said, I have a videotape of kids getting abused. I followed this case closely, and I know a lot of the people involved, as I've told you.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I didn't know that. Really? Thousands of children got raped? Yeah. Who raped them? Where are the rapists? Like, why aren't they in jail? What? This is the Department of Justice.
Yes.
That is so crazy. This is honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And I just think it's very dangerous to play around with this stuff. Like, very dangerous.
Well,
I don't want a revolution, but if you wanted a revolution, this is how you would act.
All right, Jamal, what do you think hearing that from Tucker?
Well, first of all, Tucker.
Now, this is why you watch what you say. You watch what you say. So Pam Bundy saying what she said, and Tucker Carlson just repeated what she said. It's like, why would you say stuff like that? And all of a sudden, you're saying that there is no Epstein file or no Epstein list, or we've checked, we've investigated, and don't worry, everybody, just go on ahead with your business. It's all right, Americans. Of course, people would have questions because you came out saying you have loads and loads and loads of stuff on Epstein and the people he was with or worked with or people that were involved. So it's like, you cannot just come out and say, well, everything is good. You know what? Forget about it. People will not forget about it. People will not forget about it. So please, man, look, as much as I love what Trump is doing with the border, foreign policy, with NATO, with no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, school choice for low-income families, low taxes for all Americans. And the fact is, once this guy, Powell, is out, interest rate will go all the way down. The economy is doing better, no inflation. So it's like, I like almost everything he's doing. But with this right here, this may be detrimental for the Republican Party for 2026 and probably in 2028. Because the midterms is next year, 2026. Presidential is 2028. So, I mean, if they already lose the House or Senate in 2026, you don't even have the majority going into the presidential election. I mean, who knows? With this is not a good look.
is being dangerous by alluding to something like a revolution when we're talking about the MAGA people, because we know that MAGA forces have been willing to use violence in pursuit of their political aims. We saw it on January 6th. You know, Gretchen said something a second ago about is Trump covering for Pam Bondi, but the question also may be, is Pam Bondi covering for Trump? We just really don't know. Donald Trump has been very forceful. He's a great television performer. When the question of Epstein comes up, every time he dissembles, he attacks the reporter. Remember before, he'll release the UFO files, he'll release the JFK files. Will you release the Epstein files? Well, I don't know if we should, do that. Innocent people may get wrapped up in that. I just think something's going on here. We got to keep asking the questions until we find out what's really happening, and they should just release the files.
I mean, right. I mean, that seems to be the point.
But the fact is, if Trump was on the Epstein list, don't you think that the Democrat Party would have released whatever files they had on Epstein? They would have, because this guy was going from courthouses to campaign grounds. That's what was going on in 2023, 2024. Trump was going from courthouse, from legal battles to roundtable conversation to campaign to rallies. That's what he was doing, because they were attacking Trump. Letitia James was saying, well, this guy is a criminal, Most of the Democrats were saying Trump is a criminal. Okay? They said he inflated his net worth or property value. So it's like everything these guys are or have done was to show us how bad Donald Trump was. So if they had anything on Donald Trump concerning the Epstein files, I 100% believe they would have released it. I mean, this guy was almost taken out in Pennsylvania. That's how much he was going to be stopped from being the president of the United States. Even when he won the election, he was on a FaceTime call with a judge, and they had to say, well, we're going to charge you and convict you for nothing. So you're going to be the first convicted felon to be the president of the United States. So it's like, if they had anything on this guy concerning Epstein files, they would have released it. But now, I mean, most of these things is just way above our pay grade. Okay, this is way above our pay grade. I'll tell you that much, because I mean, look, there are two parts to this story. Okay, there's definitely two parts to this story, and in this world, there's the people on top, the 1 percentile, and then every other people. So these guys, these are the 1 percentile. Okay, these are the people on top of the top. Okay, so I mean, if it's a caucus, then there's no way it's coming out. There's just no way it's coming out.
Gretchen, at this point, and this is something that has been spun up, right, by some of the very people who are now saying, I mean, when Kash Patel and Dan Bongino came out recently and tried to downplay the Epstein files, they were eviscerated by the MAGA base, right? And now this is putting the whole thing on steroids. Far-right activist Laura Loomer, Gretchen, we know Trump listens to her. She has been hammering Pam Bondi on social media. She posted, how come we can't talk about what a dumb, lying bimbo Pam Bondi is? JD Vance, please encourage President Trump to fire Pam Bondi. She's a disgrace. So what do you hear when you hear this? I mean, look, Laura Loomer, we know, has had very specific, tangible influence on Trump on big decisions.
Yes, in national security, specifically in the last few months. I do think she has Trump's ear. So, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Trump seemed to be protecting Bondi today. But I think one other really important point is in this second administration, we have seen a lot of MAGA supporters of Trump come out and be totally against him on really big issues. And what I think is fascinating is that he can go after people who are in groups, like lawyers, like members of Congress. I'll primary you if you don't agree with me. But with these single influencers, he's not doing that. And I think that raises a huge question about whether or not he has the power to actually silence them.
Right. And Jamal, I guess the whole question is there really no there? Or is the question, who is covering up for whom?
That is the question. Listen, what is sobering is that Donald Trump, if this were normal times, Donald Trump, he's turned around on Ukraine, and there are people in MAGA who are upset about that. He was in this relationship with Elon Musk, who's now turned on him, who wants to start a party, and so that could maybe peel off people. Now we've got the Epstein files, or all these things that would normally take down a regular politician. Donald Trump seems to be able to survive these things. I mean, he's such a political force, it doesn't really matter. But what does happen is the people around him are the ones who catch the brick. And so the question for Pam Bondi is this going to limit her ability to either be an effective attorney general or to even keep her job as attorney general?
The fact is, Donald Trump, I'll just say, this guy is blessed by God, because in my opinion, nobody gets to the top without God allowing you to be the top dog, okay? This guy, I believe God gives power, okay? Only God can give you this much power and this much grace, because this guy should not be here, but he's here right now, and he is the commander-in-chief. He's the 45th, now the 47th president of the United States. Look, we could say whatever we want to say. Some people don't like Donald Trump. Some people will never like Donald Trump. But a lot of people love Donald Trump. But don't forget, some people will never like Donald Trump. And some people would say, he's a crook, he's this, he bankrupted his casino, he's that, he came from money, or whatever people want to say. People would have something to say regardless. But one thing I know for sure is only God can put you in a place like this. Only God can place you at the highest level in this world, okay? Or at least only God can allow it to happen. So if God allowed it to happen for Donald Trump to be the president of the United States, then maybe, just maybe, there's a plan for him to do something special for the United States. And I think he's already doing it. All right, listen to what China and Russia is saying concerning Donald Trump.
But the truth is, he believed me 10%. And I told you this, he believed me 10%. Then I'm with President Xi of China. But I said the same thing to them. I said, if you go into Taiwan, I'm going to bomb the shit out of Beijing. He thought I was crazy. He said, Beijing, you're going to bomb Beijing. I said, I have no choice. I got to bomb them. We're going to bomb Beijing. And he didn't believe me either, except 10%. And 10% is all you need. In fact, 5% would have been okay too. And we never had a problem. We would have never had a problem.
The Trump campaign declined to comment on the content of what you just heard there, but the three deeply sourced reporters who acquired that exclusive audio are joining me now tonight. Josh Dawsey of the Wall Street Journal, Isaac Arnsdorf of the Washington Post, of course also Tyler Pager of the Times as well, are all three the authors on the book that is out today. 2024, how Trump retook the White House and the Democrats lost America. And Josh Dawsey, you obviously have covered Trump along with me for years now. Given the audio of what you heard the president saying about Putin then, I wonder what you made of how fed up he seemed with him today.
Well, I think what he was trying to tell the donors there, Caitlin, was that he could have deterred this. He could have stopped this. You heard him say on the campaign trail, if you reelect me, I can stop this immediately. And it's clear Vladimir Putin has not been listening to what Trump wants, right? Trump says, I've been doing all these calls, they're frustrating. Today he unleashed a profanity as he was sort of describing what he thought of Vladimir Putin and what he was doing. But what you see in that tape is Trump behind closed doors to his richest donors in New York, telling them, I had control over these guys, basically espousing the madman theory, right? They thought I was just crazy enough that maybe I would have done something if they crossed me. And I used that to basically get them to do what I wanted them to do. And I think what the frustration you're seeing now from President Trump, we've reported he says Vladimir Putin has changed. He makes all of these comments in private about how he used to think he had a better relationship with Vladimir Putin. And I think Putin's just not listening to him. Putin's not listening to what Trump wants him to do.
Yeah, I mean, and Isaac, when Trump was running, and obviously that is a deep part of the book, is what the Trump campaign looked like internally, as well as the Biden and Harris campaign. But when he was running, the argument that he made to voters was, I can fix this. I can handle this. You know, Putin is scared of me and intimidated by me, as Josh mentioned there. And now here we are, that he's been in office for several months and is realizing that Putin isn't showing a lot of interest in getting the deal that Trump wants here.
Well, more often than Putin being scared of him, it was, Putin was someone he had a good relationship with. And Trump has often talked about Putin as someone who could make a deal with, that they could find some common ground. And a lot of Russia specialists in the U.S. national security establishment looked at that and said, Putin is not interested in improving relations with the West. He wants nothing to do with the West. It just doesn't work that way. You can just give him what he wants and he's going to go home. That's not a way to resolve this war. And Trump is finding that out the hard way now that he's 6 months into past due on his promise for that war to be over. And he's clearly frustrated.
Josh, what did it say to you when Trump was asked, when I asked him, who directed the pause of this shipment of munitions? Clearly something he did not want, given he has just said he's going to send more to Ukraine. And he just essentially, turned it into an answer that he did not fully elaborate on and didn't turn to Hegseth, who was sitting right next to him.
Right. I mean, you and I have seen him do that many times over the years, Caitlin. When he wants to answer a question, he can often be long and verbose and can tell you exactly what he wants. And when he doesn't want to answer a question, he clearly didn't want to answer that question. He didn't, right? And I've always been very interested, as a reporter, when the president doesn't answer a question like that, what the answer might be. Obviously, we don't know tonight.
And your other co-author, Tyler, is here with us now. And Tyler Pager, obviously, in terms of watching that cabinet meeting play out today, I think the president's reaction to this sanctions bill that a lot of Republican senators have been ready to vote on and pass for weeks now, if not months, it was notable that he sounded more open today to that than we have heard him. The question remains if he signs it and if it actually goes into effect, because there's a waiver built in, as Senator Lindsey Graham has said, for the president. But I wonder what it says to you if he's losing patience and ready to try a different strategy here.
Yeah, it's a remarkable evolution from the president. We've seen his tone and mood shift over the course of several months as he's been frustrated by his inability to solve this conflict. The president came into office promising to be a president that achieved peace, and he has been frustrated that he's not been able to do that. I think he thought that he could get more done with Vladimir Putin than other presidents were able to do, and that's clearly not the case. I think from the audio you played earlier in the clip, he was bragging about his ability to negotiate or sort of put pressure on Putin, and it's much easier to do that from a campaign perspective than a governing perspective, and he's seeing that play out in real time, and that's causing this shift.
Yeah, it stood out in a real way. And I want to talk more about the book because there are so many buzzy pieces of it, and just it really does get behind the scenes of what was playing out behind closed doors, that not all voters got to see what was happening in the inner workings of these campaigns. But I do have the former Ambassador Rahm Emanuel here with me. And just, given your expertise in this area, how you've seen foreign policy play out, I wonder what stood out to you, given Putin has never indicated he's ready to end this war. I don't think anyone has seen real signs. I mean, he's had conversations with Trump, but it has always seemed like the ball is being pushed down the road here.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an assessment of power and position right now. I think the president actually is in a much stronger position than the card he's playing, and Putin's in a much weaker position than the card he's playing. Why? You take the bombing in Iran, regardless of our politics, Putin sees that as a strong position, not just a madman position, but strong position. The aftershock is being felt in Beijing and Moscow. You have a situation, Putin lost Syria. He has shown to be feckless on Iran. He's taken 3.5 years of a war in Ukraine, which is a much smaller country, and can't even get 4 provinces to close out. The military's weak. His intelligence failed on Wagner, on Ukraine, and on Syria. His economy, by his own central bank, has said is collapsing. This is a person who's up against the wall. And the president has an opportunity to both apply weapons pressure and sanction pressure. And if he does that, he can actually take the strength that the United States has and apply it to the weaknesses that Putin has. And he hasn't done that now. He's getting to that point, And the reason Putin hasn't done this is because he has bet the house, and if he comes up short, he's got his own domestic political problems.
Well, and the sanctions bill would essentially affect the countries that are still buying oil from Russia and that are not helping Ukraine here. I do think there's a question of what more you can do to hurt Russia. What we always heard from President Biden was they'd basically done everything that they thought they could do.
Look, I mean, first of all, the sanctions were not a one and done. They come and they impact over time. You just had reporting just the other day about the economy is now, the war economy that pumped up falsely the economy in Russia is starting to implode and self-implode. You have interest rates at 21%. Part of the oil executive being murdered the other day and being thrown out the window is because they were starting to actually criticize the stewardship of the economy so tied to the defense budget. And strategically, around the globe, you literally see Putin as the emperor with no clothes.
What did you make of the audio, though, that Josh and his co-authors, Isaac and Tyler, have obtained here, where he's saying, I mean, I guess the question is, did he actually say this to Xi Jinping and to Vladimir Putin? But he's saying that he threatened to bomb Beijing and Moscow.
I've come to a view, this is maybe well-honed cynicism. What candidates say in front of donors, I wouldn't exactly take at face value, especially this. And second is, on China, let me say this, everybody focuses on Taiwan. Look, you have the South China Sea with Philippines. That is a country. It is a country that's a treaty ally of the United States. You have our entire reputation and the clarity of our deterrence on stage. I've always thought, as a former ambassador to Japan, the South China Sea vis-a-vis Philippines, then the 38th parallel of the Korean Peninsula, then the Taiwan Straits. And Xi does not have confidence in his own military to make that move yet. So to me, the real challenge is right now, first and foremost, in the front queue, is the South China Sea with the Philippines.
First of all, I don't think any country wants to challenge the United States. I mean, it's just what it is. Because the United States, the budget for defense, for making weapons, these bombs and all of these things is way, way extremely beyond measure when it comes to comparing to Russia or China. The United States has higher budget, probably times 2 or times 5 of Russia. And for China, it's a lot more than China. So it's not like, look, nobody wants to try the United States. However, disruption can happen for sure. But, we can only hope for God's protection. That's the number one thing first. We can only hope for God's protection. So with that being said, this is not going away. Check this out.
New this morning, outrage among the president's own supporters over how the Department of Justice is handling the so-called Jeffrey Epstein files. In a series of scathing posts on Twitter, longtime Trump ally, fierce supporter Laura Loomer called for the president to fire Attorney General Pam Bondi. This all happened after a memo released by the Department of Justice and the FBI this week said that accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide, confirmed that. The Attorney General also said there is no evidence that Epstein kept a, quote, client list, despite previously suggesting there would be some kind of bombshell. CNN's Elena Treen live at the White House this morning, where this just doesn't seem to be going away, Elena.
Yeah, John, and it's not just, people who are in the MAGA movement, in the president's base, and I will say there's many. It's not just Laura Loomer, but many other prominent people like Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, the list goes on, who have been really reeling from the drop of that memo that the Justice Department released on Sunday, essentially concluding, in their words, that Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide and that there's no so-called client list. But there's a lot of people as well inside the White House, the president's own officials, who are increasingly frustrated with how not just the Justice Department, but specifically Attorney General Pam Bondi has handled this. I mean, I spoke with one Trump advisor. They said that Bondi had bungled this case from the start by overpromising some of the findings that they were anticipating. Another advisor told me that this was a political nightmare, questioning why they released this at this point in time and the way in which they did it. Again, releasing this short memo and also leaking it to a certain media outlet. Look, part of these problems as well that adds to all of this is Bondi's own claim back in February when she was doing an interview with Fox News where she said she had the client list on her desk for review. Now, she was pressed on some of these questions yesterday during the president's cabinet meeting and tried to argue that she was referring to the broader case. I want you to take a listen to both that interview, but also her response.
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that.
Now, look, we talked to a lot of different people following Bondi's answer there yesterday in that cabinet room who said essentially they are not satisfied by that answer, particularly given so many people in the MAGA movement, so many of the president's supporters, and including even some people in his own administration had previously argued that there was so much more to this case, particularly wanting to unearth potential accomplices to Jeffrey Epstein, not totally satisfied by this. Now, the president, for his part, John, has argued that this is old news. He kind of dismissed some of the questions on this yesterday in that cabinet meeting as a desecration. And we are told that he's not acutely annoyed with Bondi herself. He was briefed on some of these findings last week by Bondi and the FBI director, Kash Patel. But still, a lot of people inside the White House not exactly happy with how this all played out.
All right, Elena Treen at the White House this morning. Thank you. With us now, CNN political commentator, Republican strategist Michael Singleton, and Christine Quinn, the executive committee chair of the New York State Democratic Committee. And just to review some of the people calling for Bondi's head here, again, it's Laura Loomer, fierce supporter of the president, putting out these tweets. She needs to be fired. She has tainted the investigation. Elon Musk, one-time friend of the president, saying, how can people be expected to have faith in Trump if he won't release the Epstein files? And then Megyn Kelly in Politico pointed this out this morning, said of Pam Bondi, her days are numbered as a member of the Trump administration. I mean, Michael, this isn't just one person now. Yeah. It's a lot, and it's not getting quieter. It's getting louder.
It's not getting quieter, and she made a statement that many believed was accurate, which was that she was going to attempt to prosecute the individuals, whether it's Republican men, Democratic men, who were engaged with Jeffrey Epstein and doing some pretty atrocious and disgusting things against young girls and young women. I mean, what type of society doesn't rally around protecting young girls and women? I've been involved with groups in the past wanting to bring and shine a spotlight on these types of issues. And my hope would be the top cop in the nation would take this very seriously. And she really isn't. And a lot of Republicans are scratching their heads, questioning why. I think this is a bipartisan issue. I think Americans want these powerful men, whoever they are, to be brought to justice.
And the president was asked about this in this cabinet meeting yesterday. Let's listen to how he responded.
And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration.
Christine, the president's wishing it away here, but it was his own supporters, right. People like J.D. Vance, not to mention the people we've all listed there, talking about the Epstein files all during the campaign. I mean, this was a thing that his people were pushing, and now he's like, nothing to see here.
Right, his people pushed it. His appointee brought it back up square in front of everyone with saying there would be prosecutions, things would be released, and now nothing. And what's a desecration is what happened to those girls and those young women, not reporters appropriately asking questions, which are not new questions, but follow-up questions to what Pam Bondi had already put out there. And when you make promises to prosecute, to release information, and you don't, then all theories come up. And it's a terrible thing that there are people saying the president might be on the list. How horrible would that be? They can put all of this to rest by putting all the information out there. And you're right, this isn't Republican or Democrat. This is a matter of justice, and that is what Pam Bondi should be focused on.
And that's why people are upset about with Pam Bondi. I mean, these conservatives, Megyn Kelly, I mean, even Tucker Carlson talking about this. Charlie Kirk had a post on X, and he said, even if Republicans were on the list, would you be okay with them being brought to justice? And overwhelmingly, the responses were yes, because people want to protect the innocence of young girls and young women, and we should all be about that.
And again, it was people within this administration promising it would be released. We'll see where this goes next.
This is supposed to be about the most transparent administration ever.
What on earth is going on? Was Pam Bondi set up by deep state FBI career officials? Is she stupid? Is she so click thirsty that she got out over her skis trying to make news, being a Fox News star?
Pam Bondi, all of it. All those videos are saying, yeah, she's seen the videos. It's all coming out. And then now it doesn't exist. I mean, what? What?
Alex Jones broadcasting from his car. Okay, so how much of a political risk is President Trump taking by dismissing the priorities of portions of the base? CNN's Aaron Blake writes, everyone has their limits. Trump's giving them reasons to be suspect about his and top administration officials' intentions. And there's been at least some evidence of a brewing backlash. Group chat is back. I have to be honest, I remember the backlash, many minutes ago over the strikes on Iran. And it feels like that's a way more significant and important issue than that. And everybody rolled.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think two things. I think we've seen President Trump, this term and last term, be like a rain jacket. Some of these things just roll off of him. But here's the reality. I think we've all been afraid to say this. President Donald Trump is a lame duck president. And so some of these things we're talking about politically will not hurt him because he is a lame duck president. What I'm concerned about what's going to happen in 2026 with the Congress, with Senate. So I think some of these things are going to be harder for the Republican Party to talk about than this President Trump.
Look, I'll be honest. There's so many weird, bizarro, Addams Family-esque stories that people go down rabbit holes when it comes to the MAGA base. I've never read a Jeffrey Epstein story. When somebody complains that Donald Trump has not told us where Elvis is really living, I'm not going to read that ever. Also, because Donald Trump is right. We have Texas, and we have what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. We have
but nobody
Iran
asked
and Iraq.
Pam Bondi to make a bunch of binders to hang,
That's
to
fine,
send
yeah.
to the Twitterati. It feels like a cell phone.
I think the mental health of America or
Yeah.
Americans is much better off not paying attention to those crazy, shiny things.
Well, to be fair, President Trump has also set up his cabinet to be these sort of TV, Twitter
Right.
folks.
Hire
So
professionals.
yeah, exactly.
It's always-
so I think
always a good
that's
lesson.
that's kind of baked in.
I do think there are a few different stories that we're all going to look at as like litmus tests of how far can the president depart from the MAGA base or press them. I do think like a conspiracy story that President Trump's circle spent a long time fanning until he came into office, and then they had to they were the establishment and they were the government and they had to decide what information to release, is a little bit different than whether he's changing his policy on Russia v. Ukraine or on how to handle deportations of undocumented migrants who are not violent and haven't committed any crimes inside the United States. Like, I put those in two different categories. They both may be tests of the MAGA base, but one is like substantively, unless you really think there's like a triple conspiracy going on, there wasn't any there to the Epstein files, and now the sitting president's administration has to say so, as
And
opposed to a change in U.S. posture.
we also heard one of the folks in that video talking about doing it for clicks. This whole industry is for clicks, right? So I think the question, in a way, I'm kind of asking is, if you ride this certain horse into battle, like it was to their advantage to embrace this when it ginned up interest for him in the party.
Yes.
And now it felt a little bit like he was saying, let the adults talk.
Yeah, I think historically, if you look at those people who back candidates very, very early, they're the first ones to have their hearts broken in certain sort of ways. You go back to the people who endorsed Ronald Reagan in 1976, they were the ones who said, well, wait a second, why are you talking to Russians to begin with? So this is normal. In some sense, it's just because Donald Trump has brought so much abnormality to our politics that we're talking about this.
Oh my goodness, this is not going to go away, this Epstein situation, because even the base that love the OG, the 45th, now the 47th president of the United States, they're hurt concerning this Epstein situation. I mean, of course, there should be, because, it involves kids, and anything that involves children, people are so sensitive about it. So, which they should be. I mean, of course, I got a 5-year-old daughter. I mean, think about it. That's just absolutely crazy when you say that you have loads of evidence about people doing explicit things with children, and it's like, okay, who are these people? And all of a sudden, it's like, well, there's nothing to see. It's like, I don't know if that's going to fly. And this may cost the Republican Party the
Breaking
Congress
for you this morning, the
2026.
search and rescue efforts in Central Texas now a much bigger mission than we knew just 24 hours ago. Officials there have announced.
Oh my goodness. So this is Texas tragedy, the catastrophe that happened in Texas with the flooding. As you can see on your screen right here, it says over 170 people missing. And we know that it's over 100 people died. Like over 100 people are already dead from this flooding. So, man, we can only say, may God bless these people's family. And, hopefully we do better next time with the warnings and also evacuation process.
The number of missing from the catastrophic floods has skyrocketed to more than 170 people now. The number of dead has also climbed to at least 111. Also, we have new details now about Camp Mystic, the all-girls Christian camp where at least 27 campers and counselors are among the dead. CNN obtaining records showing a state inspector certified that the camp did have an emergency plan in place just a couple of days before the floods. And this morning, the scrutiny is growing. Were officials prepared enough? And why were evacuations not ordered ahead of this massive flood? CNN has learned that Texas officials twice rejected funding applications from Kerr County, the hardest hit, for a flood warning system dating back nearly a decade. And so Kerr County never got the sirens that could have alerted residents when the floods came overnight. Our team is in the flood zone. CNN's Pamela Brown is in Kerrville for us, and Isabel Rosales is in Center Point, two of the devastated Texas communities. Let's start with you, Pam. You have some new reporting about the preparedness at Camp Mystic. What can you tell us this morning, as all of these families are mourning what happened there?
Yeah, absolutely. The mourning continues. The emotion's still very raw here on the ground. I can tell you, Sarah, that according to records seen and obtained, a state inspector visited Camp Mystic 2 days before the deadly flooding and found that it was in compliance for Texas regulations on youth camps, that there was an emergency plan in place at Camp Mystic in the event of a disaster or a serious accident or a fatality. Now, we should note that Texas regulations for youth camps don't say anything about flood zones, and we don't know if this emergency plan took that into account or whether it also took communication breakdowns into account, because we are learning more about some of the communication gaps there at Camp Mystic. I spoke to a counselor who said for the most part, counselors didn't have a walkie-talkies, only leadership at the camp, and the owners did have that. And we know that the counselors didn't have cell phones with them, and that the loudspeaker at the camp wasn't functioning because of our power outages. I also told by the counselor I spoke to that she personally did not receive sort of emergency evacuation training, and we're hearing more and more stories about the heroism of these counselors who really jumped into action during that deadly flooding. There were two counselors who are speaking out about what they did for their campers, saying that they wrote the campers' names on their skin when they learned what was happening and quickly moved them to higher ground. So many stories like that where these counselors saved so many lives. It's really inspiring. But at the same time, Sarah, we know that not everyone made it out of live there at Camp Mystic. We're learning more about one of the campers who didn't. Greta Toronzo was a camper who had been at Camp Mystic for 3 years. Her mother released a statement saying Greta was kind, creative, and full of love, and also brave, athletic, and determined. We miss her bright spirit, her sweet smile, and her endlessly loving heart. Sarah.
Oh, what a sweet, sweet picture of her. And I know you have been going through it as a former camper there at Camp Mystic. You've been bringing us such gripping stories about how people are handling this. Thank you so much, Pamela. All right, now over to you, Isabel. We've seen this number now skyrocket, the number of people officials say is missing. And I'm curious what that means to those who have been on the ground there for days, trying to find either bodies or those who may possibly still be alive.
Sarah, good morning. That was a big moment yesterday. I was with volunteers when I was listening in on the press conference from the governor, Greg Abbott, and I heard that figure and I related it back to them because they weren't listening in and they were all quiet, stunned. It was clearly a very shocking moment, but then they told me, yeah, okay, this is a focus. We've got a number now. We know now how many people we need to find. So clearly, this is something that has given them even more drive than they've had this entire time because it is a goal now. A goal. I want to introduce you to Michael Tober, who is the founder of Mission Mules. This is a Christian nonprofit. And if that name is familiar, it is because this same organization was there on the ground in Asheville, North Carolina, helping out with medical supplies, with food, everything that was needed in the search happening in the mountains there. Can you talk me through, Michael, what it is that you guys are doing this morning? I'll follow you.
Okay, this morning we're waiting. We got a briefing coming up. So we want to get saddled up and be ready, and then these guys will get their assignments, and then they will have us start packing their saws, their fuel, everything they need to do recovery work. So that's what we're doing right now. My guys are starting to saddle. I'll go ahead and saddle up.
And I'm wondering, as you're saddling up your mule right here, you have 6 of them. Can you walk me through, you guys got into town yesterday, can you walk me through what struck you about the situation here in Central Texas in comparison to what happened in Asheville?
I'll have to say here, if you look across this river here, you see how high the high water mark is. Some of that stuff's 30 and 35 foot off the ground. And that was the first thing that I noticed was how much volume had come through here.
Yeah, and this is different than the situation in North Carolina because you were trying to access communities that were essentially cut off. Right. The roads there were blocked to the mountains. What are the challenges that you're experiencing out here? How is this different? And how are these mules helping out?
So, yeah, like you said, in North Carolina, we were getting people that were actually cut off. Here, you can drive most of where you got to go, but that once you get to that point where the water was running the hardest, you hit like down up the street here, there's some 3-4 foot slides. You got to come off the rocks, and not really any harder. It's just a different type of work. It's just all rock this time. But that's pretty much what they use this for. The least amount we can make these guys travel with loads, because we continually do this, the better. So if we can drive down there and we can take them in empty and then load up where the trucks stop and then go in, that's what we do here.
Yeah, Michael, thank you so much. I know that you're packing supplies and going behind teams of cadaver dogs. So as they go in and make sure that there's no one left behind, they're going in there with all of those supplies. We thank you for your time, guys.
Yeah. Mules, horses, cadaver dogs, and dozens of rescuers going out every single day. It is heartening to see. Isabel Rosales, thank you to you and to our Pam Brown as well, who was in the flood zone. John.
All right, senior Texas officials have now acknowledged that if Kerr County had flood warning sirens, that lives might have been saved. With us, Nicole Wilson from San Antonio. She started an online petition calling for Kerr County to install these sirens. Nice to see you this morning, Nicole. Talk to me about why. What was the instigation to get you started on this?
Ultimately, I grew up in Kentucky, where tornadoes are extremely prevalent there. We lived and died by the tornado sirens, and this was in the 80s and 90s when there were no text alerts. But those sirens were across the county, and you would hear them at 3 a.m. in the morning, and they would wake you up. And we had 2 different sounds for watches and warnings. And so you knew where to go based on which siren was going off. We trained from the time we were children until we were adults, and on the protocols for tornadoes, where if you're driving a car, where to go. So when I found out that there were not sirens in this area and in a lot of areas in the state of Texas, I don't think we have them in San Antonio, and we had a tornado a few years ago. And that blew my mind, because tornadoes are, sirens are simply an easy warning system that everybody will hear it within range. And you do have to put them within range. There are multiple sirens that, you have to kind of plan that out from a proximity perspective, but you cannot rely on text. So for example, my daughters were just at a faith-based camp. These children are not allowed to bring any technology whatsoever. It'll get confiscated because they're there to be present. They're there to grow in their faith. And the counselors are also not allowed to have cell phones in the cabins. And so you cannot rely on the text alerts. Additionally, in this area, in San Antonio at least, we've started getting text alerts for amber alerts, silver alerts, blue alerts at 3 a.m. And so many people have kind of grown numb to these alerts that are going off, and they'll hear the alert, they'll roll over, they'll go back to bed. Cell phones service is incredibly spotty. It's so bad that where we live in the San Antonio area next to a major resort, there are places in my house I can't go and have cell phone service. I have 2 internet providers to compensate for that. And still don't always have service. And so I assume it's very similar in that rural area, that there is not always the right cell service. But the bottom line is this happened in the middle of the night. People were asleep. People absolutely did not hear the phone go off. Some people sleep with their phones off. And so you cannot rely on one. And I think I just heard this in another speaker, but layered security for TSA enabled them, Secretary Noem, to work with TSA for people not to have to take their shoes off going through the X-ray systems, right? And it was a layered security effect, right? And so the same thing goes for risk mitigation. You have to have layers, and you cannot rely on.
Yes. So, like some of you know, I am in Georgia, and I was affected by Hurricane Helene as well, but not as devastating as the people in, Asheville, North Carolina, and some part of South Carolina. But for sure, we were affected by Hurricane Helene. We did not have power for 10 days. The internet was out for like 12 days. So, of course, I had to take my girls out of here to another city for those 10 days, actually for like 9 days, because the first day it's like, okay, maybe power would come back the next day, but it's like it's gonna take. We got update from Georgia Power saying it would take at least 2 weeks for the power to come back on. So it's like, whoa, I got a 5-year-old daughter. I'm like, no, hell no. So I had to take my girl somewhere secured and safe. And when we got back, I had to be out there taking out, clearing out debris with other men in the community, helping the community. But, it's not easy compared to people who actually lost lives. My God, I can't even begin to imagine what most of these families must be going through right now. I only had 10 days to 12 days of no power and no internet. And when I got back, I'm like, oh, dear God, thank God I'm here alive with my girls. Now imagine if you lost people. It's just crazy. May God console these people because nobody deserves what happened in Texas. I mean, it's just devastating, man.
Pam Bondi getting harshly criticised in what is known as the MAGA world after the Justice Department released a memo saying that the accused sex trafficker died by suicide in jail while awaiting trial, and that there is no so-called client list of notable figures involved with Epstein that have fueled right-wing conspiracy theories. Here's how both President Trump and Bondi answered a question about the DOJ memo during Tuesday's cabinet meeting. Have a listen.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file, along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that.
Well, Randy Kaye has more on that Fox News interview from February, the DOJ memo, and the fallout that this is all causing in the MAGA world.
In February, Attorney General Pam Bondi was asked whether the Department of Justice would release accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein's so-called list of clients.
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that.
That was red meat for many on the far right, who since Epstein's death in his jail cell in 2019 have suggested that the government is hiding secrets related to him. One of the conspiracy theories? That Epstein kept a client list to use as blackmail against named powerful figures. Bondi did not discourage the conspiracies.
What you're going to see hopefully tomorrow is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information.
Bondi never delivered, except to offer a few social media influencers binders of documents in February this year, much of which had already been made public. She wasn't the only one throwing a bone to conspiracy-minded theorists in MAGA world. Here's Dan Bongino on his podcast before he became Deputy FBI Director.
What the hell are they hiding with Jeffrey Epstein?
Bongino also raised doubts about Epstein's jail cell suicide.
The questions surrounding this alleged suicide are numerous. Yeah. And are worth entertaining and worth getting to the bottom of quickly.
The Department of Justice and the FBI have now put those questions to rest with an unsigned memo released this week that rules out any smoking gun. The memo confirms Epstein died by suicide, something Bongino and FBI Director Kash Patel were already starting to admit publicly.
You know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself.
The memo also says there is no incriminating client list, adding, there was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. The backlash in MAGA world has been swift. Conspiracy theorist Alex Jones broke down in tears as he accused the White House of being part of a cover-up. And far-right activist Laura Loomer is calling on Bondi to resign.
Well, that was Randy Kaye reporting. Let's not forget Elon Musk in all of this, inserting himself into the middle of this controversy in the midst of his feud with the president. He accused Donald Trump without evidence of being in the Epstein files in a post that's since been deleted, also writing that it is the real reason they've not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT. Then just yesterday posting, how can people be expected to have faith in Trump if he won't release the Epstein files?
In a series of scathing posts on X, longtime Trump ally Laura Loomer calling for the president to fire Attorney General Pam Bondi. It comes after a memo released by the DOJ and the FBI this week confirmed Epstein died by suicide, and Bondi said that there is no evidence that Epstein kept a, quote, client list. CNN's Elena Treen is live from the White House. One of the issues here is that it's some of his cabinet members themselves are the ones that ginned up the story about Epstein before they were in office, and now they are facing backlash from some in the MAGA world. What are you learning?
That's right. And despite what you just heard from the president there are a lot of people in this White House and the broader Trump administration as well who are really frustrated with how not only the Justice Department, but specifically how Attorney General Pamela Bondi has handled this. And, you know, the release of that memo on a Sunday heading into a busy week. Some people told me, one Trump advisor, I should say, that called this a political nightmare, this memo that they released, and argued, why didn't they do this, you know, going into the holiday weekend rather than coming out of it to try and bury some of this news, or even better yet, they argued, wait until after the midterms. One Trump administration official told me that Bondi had bungled the case from the start by over promising some of these bombshell findings, only to do what they argued, under-deliver in the end. And you're exactly right, Sarah, that it's not just a lot of people in the MAGA movement in the president's base who had been calling for more information on these files, asking for them to be unsealed by the judge in this case, asking for this Justice Department to open an investigation into any potential accomplices that Jeffrey Epstein may have had. There are people in this administration, people like Vice President J.D. Vance, the FBI Director Dan Bongino, for example, who was involved closely on this, who had prior to this administration argued there was more to this case and the Epstein files than maybe officials were letting on. And so that's why there's so much scrutiny on this. And adding to some of these problems, Sarah, is what we had heard from Pam Bondi herself back in February. She was asked during a Fox News interview, what is the status of that so-called client list that Epstein may have had? And she argued it was sitting on her desk for review. Of course, the memo that came out by the Justice Department on Monday said there is no such client list and that one of those doesn't exist. Now, she did try and explain that interview during that cabinet meeting as well. I want you to take a listen to how she put it.
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that.
So as you could hear there, Sarah, she's trying to argue that she was referring to a much broader case that was on her desk, but not an answer that, I spoke with many people after Bondi's response there who told me that they just weren't satisfied with that type of answer. I will say, though, that the president was briefed last week by Bondi as well as the FBI Director Kash Patel on some of the findings of that investigation, so he wasn't caught off guard by this. But again, a lot of people not very happy with how this has been handled and specifically how Pam Bondi has really messaged on this.
Yeah, interestingly, they did release more of the JFK assassination files, and there are a lot of people wondering why these files aren't also being released. We will see what happens. Elena Treen, great reporting from you from the White House this morning for us. John?
All right, with us now, CNN political commentators, Democratic strategist Maria Cardona, and Republican strategist Brad Todd. Brad, let me just read you what some people who have been supportive of President Trump in the past, in some cases fiercely supportive, have been saying here. Laura Loomer says of Pam Bondi, she needs to be fired. She has tainted the investigation. Megyn Kelly says her days are numbered as a member of the Trump administration. And then Elon Musk, who I don't know if we can qualify as currently supportive of President Trump, says how can people be expected to have faith in Trump if he won't release the Epstein files? So, Brett, let me just ask you about what Megyn Kelly said of Pam Bondi. Her days are numbered as a member of the Trump administration. Do you think her days are numbered?
I don't, and I think Megyn Kelly is a serious commentator most of the time, but there is something to the notion that there's a clickbait industrial complex out there, and this is the perfect kind of tabloid story for them. That this drives clicks from people who can't quit doom scrolling on social media, and that it's really nothing more than that. And I think the president's right. There are serious things happening. There are serious progress being made in things like making sure taxes don't go up, trying to crack down on illegal immigration. And I think the fact that so many people in this clickbait industrial complex, if you will, are focused on what is really a silly story is pretty insulting.
Yeah, but to sort of misquote Scream here, the clickbaiting was coming from inside the House for a long time. Brad, it was supporters, fierce supporters of President Trump, people working to get him elected, people who now have positions of power, whether it be Dan Bongino or whether it be the Attorney General Pam Bondi when she said she was reviewing the client files, whether it be then Senator, now Vice President J.D. Vance, who talked openly about the Epstein investigation and talked about the need for transparency. So, Maria, what next?
John, I'm glad you pointed that out, because the clickbait industrial complex, as Brad likes to call it, is an intricate part of the Trump family MAGA supporter group. And so you can't disassociate the two, though I understand why, because Pam Bondi is in a lot of trouble. Therefore, that is going to reflect incredibly badly on the Trump administration. It underscores the corruption, the hypocrisy, the incompetence, And the gaslighting that comes from all of those people that you just mentioned, John. And frankly, it makes now voters, MAGA voters, as well as mainstream voters go, why is it that now they have no interest in the Epstein files and in that supposed client list that now doesn't exist? Who might be on it that is going to be really hurtful to the Trump administration that they don't want that getting out? This is not the last that they're going to hear of it, because they are the ones that ginned it up, thinking maybe Democratic officials were on it, thinking maybe they could own the libs with it. And now it's backfiring.
So, I guess Pam Bundy, everybody's talking about Pam Bundy. It's like, geez. All right, here we go. New Mexico is going through a lot as well.
Two children were killed after flash floods hit a town in New Mexico.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Oh my God. Oh my God.
According to officials, monsoon rains triggered flash flooding on Tuesday at a village in the southern part of the state.
Yeah, the Rio Ruidoso River rose to an unprecedented 6 meters or 20 feet, shattering its previous record by over 1.5 meters. At least 85 Swift River rescues in the area were carried out by rescue crews, including people trapped in their cars and their homes. Ruidoso's mayor spoke about the flash flooding.
It didn't look like it was going to be this massive, but it was. It hit hard, it hit fast. We did breach all of our bridges. We did lose some more homes. We have some folks that are missing. We're looking for them right now.
Let's bring in CNN meteorologist Derek Van Dam joining us live now from the CNN Weather Center in Atlanta. I mean, some of these images, you know, that home being swept away, being carried down the river, I mean, that is unbelievable. And then you have stories about RVs being swept away as well. 3 people killed, 2 of them children. It's always heartbreaking, especially when you think about what happened out of Texas. Really heartbreaking to see this happening somewhere else in another state as well. Derek, just walk us through what we know so far.
Yeah, it's another tragic flash flooding event here in the United States, this time over the western U.S. This is what we mean by flash flood. This is a literal wall of water, and you can see with the Rio Ruidoso River as it picks up the debris from the surrounding area. So this has been exacerbated by a wildfire that was in the region back in 2024. So this left a burn scar. And then on top of that, a heavy amount of rain in a topographical area, so an elevated region with mountainous landscape, funnels all this water down into the valleys below. And unfortunately, that's where people live, right? So there's a lot of information on this graphic, but what I want to point your attention to on these North American monsoon flash floods, that's what that was. Burn scars make these areas very susceptible, and also the steep terrain. So that's helping funnel and concentrate the precipitation. So how does this work exactly? Well, we get the wildfires, right? So that happened last year. And then what that does is it creates kind of an impermeable surface at the top levels of the ground, right? So the water cannot get absorbed into the ground like it normally would be because of the recent wildfires. Eventually gravity wins with the topography, and that land slides, and it picks up everything in its path, just like you saw in the video a moment ago. So what you're looking at is a river graph. This shows all the various spikes in the river gauge here over the past few days. This is the most recent one where it crested at its record-shattering 20 feet, or roughly 6 meters. So that's just really incredible amounts of precipitation funneled into this region. There's another chance of flash flooding across that area, another watch hoisted by the National Weather Service. Equally as important, but a different type of flash flood threat here exists across the Mid-Atlantic. New to CNN, this area, the level 3 of 4, where you see that darker shading of red, that has been expanded to include Baltimore, as well as Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia. These areas have the potential for flash flooding, but the difference here is there's no burn scars in the area. This is all because of the impermeable surface that really is the concrete jungle across the Mid-Atlantic of the United States, not able to absorb this amount of water. Zane, Bianna.
Derek Van Dam live for us there. Thank you so much.
Well, the mayor of Kerrville, Texas, says the rising death toll after last week's catastrophic flooding breaks his heart. like all of ours. Officials now say at least 119 people were killed and more than 160 are still missing after the disaster that unfolded July 4th weekend.
The Cajun Navy has been on the ground here in Texas aiding in recovery efforts. Keep in mind, this is a group that responds to disasters all across the United States. And members tell us that what they're encountering here in Texas is among some of the worst that they've ever seen. Joining us now is the Vice President of the United Cajun Navy, Brian Trasher. Brian, thanks so much for being with us. So yesterday we heard from local officials, Kerr County Police, saying that no one had been found alive since Friday in the county. Do you think it's likely that a survivor would be found at this point, given that we're now 6 days from when this disaster unfolded?
I think unlikely is an optimistic word. You know, once you get past the 48 to 60 hour mark, the survivability index goes way, way down. We always hold out hope for a miracle, but as to your point, after the 6th day, it'd be unlikely that someone, if they didn't drown, was able to survive just out in the heat and you know, with wildlife and not having any food or water.
Yeah, and we've heard from volunteers and first responders who tell us that that doesn't change the fact that they hope to find survivors and at the very least to bring solace to families whose loved ones are currently missing. So the work itself doesn't change and the motivation doesn't change. I do wonder how long you think this operation is going to take place, how long the Cajun Navy plans to be here.
You know, I think we can be there as long as the EOC wants our help. We've been having a K-9 team on the ground for at least since Saturday, I think, and they're responsible for at least a dozen recoveries. Unfortunately, nobody that was alive. But again, those families will get closure with their loved ones being, their remains at least being found. We just brought in one of our superhero teams, the Mountain Mule Packers from North Carolina. These are the mules that were going up the mountains. We met them when we were out there after Hurricane Helene, and we were having trouble getting power and Starlinks up into the mountains. The treetop cover was too heavy for helicopters to land, and these mules brought up power packs and Starlinks all the way up to these little mountain towns, and we're able to get the missing person list go from like 4,000 under 1,000 in just a couple of days, just because people were getting powered up and connected.
Yeah, it's immensely helpful to have that kind of ability to do that. And it just kind of illustrates for folks at home what the terrain is like here. You've got rivers, mountains, dense brush. I also wanted to ask you about specifically what it's like for your crews to go into areas like that, because the heat is now sweltering. You've got, at least in the last few days, there had been the danger of more rain. And on top of that, it's just the amount of hours, the residual exhaustion for your teams. Talk to us about what it's like when they head out there.
It's everything you described. You know, we made the decision early on that given the sensitive nature of the type of missing persons we were looking for, we were only going to use what we call special ops volunteers, or mostly combat veterans. They did deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, so they're used to the heat, they're used to seeing horrible things, and they're emotionally and mentally tough enough to handle it and do the job and finish the mission.
Brian Trasher, thank you so much for giving us that context. Appreciate the work that the United Cajun Navy has been doing here.
Yeah, thanks CNN. Y'all have been all over us since day one. We appreciate you.
Of course. So we want to remember the victims here in Texas as we head to break. People like retired veteran Bill Venus, a father of 4 who served more than 30 years in the U.S. Army. Venus's son traveled all the way from Maryland to personally search for his father and confirms to CNN that he did find him. Venus Jr. told People magazine, quote, "He was a hero. God would have been better off taking me because he had a whole lot more work he could have done in this world."
Brand new reporting on what was happening with the emergency response in Texas, both at the local level and at the federal level, as the floodwaters raged and in the hours and days after. As the sun is starting to set on Texas Hill Country, exhausted recovery crews are closing out their 5th day doing the painstaking work that you see here. wading through the devastation to find people and loved ones who are still missing tonight. The death toll now stands at 120 people. Many of them we know are children. Those who survived are recounting just how fast and furious the water moved in.
And the screams is what haunts me. Every time I close my eyes, I hear people screaming. They were coming, walking this way, and my husband kept yelling at him, throw me your baby so he can save the baby, just that. And then a wave came and it took him.
As that grueling search goes on and more stories like that are coming out, we're getting new reporting here tonight at CNN about the federal response. And CNN has learned that the response from FEMA was actually slowed by efforts to constrain federal spending. For example here, sources inside the agency are telling CNN that officials were ready to get urban search and rescue teams in position when the water was starting to rise on Friday. But a new rule that was put in place by the secretary required her personal sign-off first. That sign-off, multiple sources told CNN, didn't come until Monday, more than 72 hours after the flooding began. A DHS spokesperson responded in part with this, saying, quote, FEMA is shifting from a bloated, DC-centric deadweight to a lean, deployable disaster force that empowers state actors to provide relief for their citizens. We're going to get a live report on the ground in Texas, but I'm first joined on this new reporting by Deanne Criswell, who is the former FEMA administrator under President Biden. And Administrator, just given your expertise on this and on these new rules that have been put in place to rein in federal spending, which obviously we know has been a big goal of the administration, but when you're actually on the ground in a moment like this and making those split-second decisions, what rules would something like this have meant for you in a moment like the floods in Texas and as that's happening?
Caitlin, I lived by one very simple principle, and that is time is our most precious commodity. You can never get time back. And so the quicker you can move resources into an area, even before you know the extent of it, then the easier it's going to be able to support those state requests for assistance immediately. What happened, I think, here is that we couldn't move, or FEMA couldn't move those resources in like they normally would to be on the ground ready once they found out how bad the situation was. And you lose time, and that's time that can cost lives in the end. And so it's really important for emergency managers to always be proactive and thinking ahead and getting resources in place. If you don't need them, great, we'll turn around, we'll send them back. It's better not to have them, not to need them and have them than the other way around.
Can you just put in perspective, $100,000 obviously is a lot of money. And so when someone reads that, they say, okay, well, that's a pretty large expense. But if you're operating from FEMA's perspective, you know, typically or sometimes these responses can soar into the billions of dollars, depending on just the severity of them. If you're inside FEMA, does that seem like a small expenditure? Is that a pretty small thing that you need to get the Secretary of Homeland Security's sign off for?
You know, when it comes to responding to a disaster and starting the recovery, there's very little that the federal government in general supports in those situations that's less than $100,000. And so what it does is it takes away the one critical aspect that FEMA has, and that's the agility to move fast. We don't ever want to be late to need. And so now with this added layer of approval that's out there, it just makes it harder for them to be proactive, to think ahead and get resources in place ahead of time.
So do you think this red tape would have slowed down a response and from your experience of running FEMA?
So when I was at FEMA, we would have had teams moving on Friday, and they would have been in place, staged, waiting for the state to say, yes, I need them, or no, I don't need them. And so they had to wait until Monday from what I understand, to even be able to move them, where they would have been moving on Friday and they would have been in place even before this approval came through on Monday.
President Trump has said that he wants to see states weaned off of FEMA. He said this before what happened in Texas. I tried to ask him yesterday if he still feels that way and wants to see that happen, and he said he would tell us later. But we have seen the Secretary, Kristi Noem, who at a cabinet meeting in March, I believe, said that she believed FEMA should be eliminated. She's repeating those calls tonight, saying that this essentially should be something that's out of the federal government's hands and in states' government's hands. I want everyone to just listen to what the secretary said in her own words.
Federal emergency management should be state and locally led rather than how it has operated for decades. It has been slow to respond at the federal level. It's even been slower to get the resources to Americans in crisis. And that is why this entire agency needs to be eliminated as it exists today and remade into a responsive agency.
What would you say to that?
A core principle of emergency management, Caitlin, has always been locally executed, state managed, and federally supported. FEMA does not run these incidents. They never have. And they come in only at the request of the state in order to support them when it exceeds their capacity. When we look at a state like Texas, the most capable state probably in the country, that also needed to ask for assistance, first through state-to-state mutual aid and then FEMA, if they need that kind of assistance, what is that going to say for every other state or small jurisdiction out there when they have a big event and they don't have the federal government that they're used to depending on? We can't ask states to replicate everything that the federal government can provide. They just won't be able to do it. And so you need to have a federal agency that is responsive, gets in there fast, like they would have been there sooner, and be able to sit side by side with that state director. Again, Caitlin, changes need to be made, mostly in the recovery. Part of that recovery process is long and cumbersome, things that frustrated me. But we need to do it smartly. We need to do it in partnership with states, tribes, territories, local jurisdictions to understand what truly needs to happen in order to be able to deliver the way the American people need it.
How do you judge the federal government's response so far in Texas? I mean, obviously we have this reporting on what FEMA officials are saying they experienced from two very well-sourced reporters here at CNN tonight on this. I just wonder, though, from your perspective since Friday, what you've made of what you've seen, and if you think that they've done a good job or if there's room for improvement in your view.
Well, first, I just want to give credit to the Coast Guard. They did such an amazing job in those first few hours after the flooding in rescuing hundreds of people. The Coast Guard is one of the best partners, not just with FEMA, but always with state and locals. And they always come in to help them when they have incidents like this, even if they don't reach a presidential disaster declaration. And so that needs to continue to be augmented. And I know that the women and men of FEMA are ready to support. There's people on the ground. There's not as many as I would have put on the ground, but I know that they're working closely with those state officials, those local officials, to make sure that they are going to get the resources that they need to help with this recovery process.
Deanne Criswell, thank you for joining with your expertise tonight. Really appreciate you.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Now, I mentioned that we're learning more about what happened, not just inside the federal level, but also inside the local level, as the questions about the response and what happened in the hours as these floodwaters were rising continued. Officials in Kerr County, Texas today have been defending their response and detailing how they managed to save hundreds of people in the first hour of that flash flood emergency, as we saw it playing out on the morning of July 4th.
Door to door, waking people up, convincing them that yes, the floodwaters are coming and you need to leave now. Folks, I don't know how many lives our KPD team saved in an hour in Kerrville, but I know that this tragedy, as horrific as it is, could have been so much worse.
County officials have also been facing questions about a report that a local firefighter called dispatch at 4:22 a.m. to request a mass emergency alert to people's phones. Of course, that fire chief has been speaking about this and saying what his call was. According to CNN affiliate KSAT, the code red was pleaded for, and as that was going on, the questions about what happened right after that and when some got it didn't happen at times until hours later.
How do you account for that lapse of time? What happened and what could have happened in that time?
Okay. As I've said earlier, with every significant event, with every emergency, we're going to have to, there's going to be an after action. Please, y'all, listen to those words, after action, okay? Those questions are going to be answered. I believe those questions need to be answered to the family of the missed loved ones, to the public, you know, to the people that put me in this office. Those need to be, and I want that answer, and we're going to get that answer. And I know that's going to be asked over and over. Please understand that. You know, we're not running. We're not going to hide from everything. That's going to be checked into at a later time. I wish I could tell you that time. I don't know that time.
Officials just concluded a news conference. Again, the death toll has gone up. It is now 119 people, including 36 children who have died. 160 plus people remain missing, among them 5 campers and 1 counselor from Camp Mystic. And again today, officials defended the emergency response to flooding, describing the toll sorting through the wreckage is taking on the first responders themselves, crediting men and women with the actions that they took in those first few hours and promising answers are coming. I want to bring in CNN's Shimon Prokupecz, who was once again at that Kerr County news conference. Shimon, what more did we learn today at that press conference? The kinds of questions that you and our colleagues have been asking.
Today, in that they brought forward the sergeant of the Kerrville Police Department, and he spoke about just the horrific and the events of that morning and the heroic efforts of some of the officers to try and save many of the people when the floodwaters were starting to rise. And just the description of some of this is so striking. You're talking about officers that are off duty, that notice the flooding. They're living in these communities. By this point, it's really getting too late, and they're going fast into action to try and save people whose homes are being flooded, and people are on the roofs and are in trees near their homes. And then at one point, officers tying a garden hose around an officer to try and pull someone to safety. That person grabbing the hose, one officer tying the garden hose around them, another officer holding that officer, and them trying to rescue people. And these are all very important stories. And but also what they highlight is how by the time law enforcement, by the time the emergency responders went into action, it was too late. People were already in danger. And that's why there are all these questions about how prepared was this county? How prepared was the city, and what steps did they take to alert people of what was potentially going to happen here, what could happen here, what resources and assets were in place in case it got very bad, and what were they doing in the hours leading up to this? What information were they given? What were they asking? Were they talking to meteorologists? We don't know any of that. In fact, I asked the mayor of this city, whether or not he was on a call with state officials on July 3rd. And I was kind of shocked to hear his answer. Take a listen.
Shimon Prokupecz from CNN. The lieutenant governor said that on July 3rd that the county judges and city mayors were invited on a daily call Thursday to discuss weather forecasts. Were you on that call?
I can't speak for the county judge. That would be hearsay. And I'm not going to contradict the information you have. But I will tell you, personally, I did not receive a telephone call.
You weren't invited to the call.
I did not receive a telephone call.
And you were never given any information about what assets were brought into the area.
So I wasn't invited to the call. I'm not trying to deflect, but I don't.
Do you know why any idea why that would happen? Or?
Maybe I'm not a local mayor. I can't tell. No. All right. Thank you, guys.
Sure.
So certainly, Dana, that part, very confusing there. The reason why all this is very important is obviously it's just how prepared the city officials here were, how county officials, how prepared they were. The state clearly was trying to alert the folks here that something, they should be worried about this, and they were already moving assets into this direction. One reporter even asked the mayor if he was aware that these assets were coming here, and he seemed to not be even aware of that. But again, all of this is so important because it speaks to the preparedness and whether or not officials had enough information in anticipation of what happens here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that was sarcasm from the mayor there. Thank you so much, Shimon, for giving us all those new details and, of course, the things that we don't yet know. Appreciate it. I want to now turn to Texas Democratic Congressman Lloyd Doggett, who is obviously somebody who represents the state of Texas and specifically the city of Austin. Thank you so much for being here. I know, just like so many people in your great state of Texas, this hits home. 2 Austin girls are among the victims, one who attended the same elementary school as your daughters. You attended a vigil on Sunday. How is your community doing?
Well, Dana, the pain is really far-reaching, and it affects most deeply, of course, the families of these 2 beautiful little girls, but it spreads through their classmates and through the community as a whole. I just view this loss of life in such a mass way as being totally inexcusable. And I believe that there were failures at every level of government, and no one wants to be held accountable for it. It is a time to recognize the heroism, of course, of the first responders who got there, as your report indicated, after the damage had already been done, and to welcome all the volunteer support and the pulling together now of all levels of government. That's important. But if we're to avoid another tragedy like this, we have to have accountability. And I think we have to have accountability at the county, state, and federal level. My focus has been federal, but I'm greatly concerned about the failures at the county and the state level.
Well, let's talk about that. You know, what we are hearing from local officials, state officials, is they insist that they're not trying to deflect, they're trying to defer the answers to those questions. It sounds like that's not satisfactory to you.
Well, I think we have to begin right now looking, for example, at the alerts that happen locally. I've represented in the past a neighboring community of San Marcos, which has also had some terrible floods. They have 14 sirens up. Even the volunteer fire department near Kerr County has a siren up in a different county. Why a county would invite people from all over the state and the country to come there to camp along the river and not have an alert system in place to protect those people is difficult for me to understand. And the admission was pretty clear from the county officials about the decision to not do that. On the other hand, the state of Texas had the opportunity to pass legislation on this previously. It basically usually prefers to distribute federal dollars and never to appropriate state dollars. I hope now belatedly a special session will address this. But for the governor to treat this as if it were a football game, this is not a game. People's lives are at stake, and there's so much more that should have been done.
Congressman, that's precisely what I was going to ask you about, because it was striking to hear the governor kind of try to connect with people in Texas using the football analogy, because obviously everybody in the world knows how much Texans love football. Listen to a little bit of what he was saying.
Every football team makes mistakes. The losing teams are the ones that try to point out who's to blame. The way winners talk is not to point fingers. They talk about solutions.
He said, we got this. We're going to make sure that we go score again, and we're going to win this game.
Well, as I said, this is not a game. People's lives are at stake, and the losers are the ones that don't learn from the mistakes, that don't hold people accountable. In this case, I think there are accountable issues at every level of government. And as I mentioned, I think the impact of the Trump administration has to be considered. I haven't accused them of anything. I've asked for a thorough investigation, and the outrageous responses of the White House press secretary and the Homeland Security Department attacking the press for raising the questions makes me all the more confident that we need to have a thorough investigation and ask what effect did it have to not have the meteorologist in charge of coordination and warnings. That person was not in place that night. Why did they not have all of their hydrologists who are responsible for rainfall and runoff calculations? What contacts did they really have there with the local level when the first flood warning came at 1:14 in the morning, when all of Kerr County was asleep, and the eventual flood emergency announcement was after much of Camp Mystic was already floating down the river. That may have been the best that could be done. They had dedicated employees out there that night, I'm sure, but I want the facts, and the fact that they would not give me that information when I asked about it 6 weeks before this happened gives me cause for concern, and they need to provide an immediate answer to all of these questions. Of course, Dana, this is all against the background of the fact that President Trump has led the effort to deny climate crisis. And we know that every time that the Fahrenheit weather gauge goes up by 1 degree, the ability of the atmosphere to become more absorbent of water goes up about 4%. The climate crisis is real. We feel it in Texas, and we need to plan for it in the future instead of denying it, which is what happens at the state and the federal level under these administrations.
Congressman, if you get any of the answers to the questions that you're raising here, and I know that you also raised in a lengthy letter to the National Weather Service and others, let us know. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I just want to say this here this morning. Good morning, America. What I want to say is this is the United States of America. This is not the divided state of America. So whether you are a Republican or a Democrat or independent, it does not matter, okay? Conservative, liberal, progressive, it does not matter. This is the United States. Let's be united. Just because I voted for Trump doesn't make me a bad person. Just because you voted for Kamala Harris doesn't make you a bad person. It's just your opinion, where you stand, and what you choose. You have the right to choose, and you have right to your own opinions and decisions. Don't say, well, you voted for Trump, so you're not my friend, or, you're a traitor or whatever. People have called me names on here. It's like, okay, great. And just 2 days ago, one of our moderators was here and saying that his family would not invite him for Thanksgiving because he said he was going to vote for Trump. What are you doing? Where are we? What are we doing as Americans? You're not going to invite your brother, your brother, your son, your cousin, your nephew, your niece, your family members to your Thanksgiving because they voted for Trump. What are you doing? You're making this a big deal. You're making politics rule your life. Go outside, enjoy the sun, breathe in the air, and be grateful that you are alive and that you are not in the hospital buying oxygen to be alive. Hug your kids, hug your spouse, and just love the fact that you are alive. People are struggling to breathe in the hospital right now. You see what just happened in Texas. Like, people are going through a lot. People are living from paycheck to paycheck. People are homeless. People are mentally ill. People are just going through a lot. And you are here saying, well, it's you versus me. Who cares? Who you think I'm here? You think I care about if you voted for Kamala Harris? I didn't vote for Kamala Harris, but I'm not going to say, well, you are the enemy because you voted for Kamala Harris. You are American. That's what matters. Everybody wake up. This is what the people up here are probably praying for people down here to be divided. It's not you versus me. It's not. It is not, ladies and gentlemen. Promise you. I promise you, when you meet me in real life, I'm a cool dude, bro. Like, I'll give you a handshake. If you like, I'm a cool guy. I don't care about all of this stuff. Okay, just because I just show you what's going on, and I voted for Trump because I think he's the guy for the job. That doesn't make me your enemy. But if you think that's like, well, you're my enemy, look, you are American first before you are a Republican or a Democrat. I'll say that one more time. You are an American person You are an American first before you are a Republican or a Democrat. Okay? Stop making your party hate your fellow American. You are American first. First before Republican or Democrat. People are fighting for this land right now all over the world, protecting the homeland, and you're here fighting over what? Look at you. You would have, man, crazy, man, just crazy.
We're continuing to follow the desperate search in Texas. Last hour, officials said at least 119 people have died and even more remain missing. In New Mexico, residents experienced similar panic during record-breaking, that's what they called it, floodwaters. That was yesterday. A River 3 surged from less than 2 feet to more than 20 in less than an hour. At least 3 people were killed. Nearly 100 people were rescued.
A really big flood just came, like a wall of flood. It came and it started going through, and that's when I started recording, because it got so wild so quickly.
In central North Carolina, another, quote, once in a 100-year flood. In Chicago, a, quote, 1 in a 1,000-year rain event. That's all just this week. Joining me now to try to make sense of this and more is Bill Nye, the science guy. Thanks for being here.
It's good to be here. I'm sorry. I really am sorry for all the trouble.
It's terrible. And so just that last part of what we were describing, you keep hearing once in a lifetime, once in 100 years, once in 1,000 years. At this point, it's not anymore. It's just where we are with the climate and the environment.
Oh, that's, as we like to say, our side of it, the science side of it. This is exactly what was predicted. It's very difficult to tie any one weather event to climate change. However, the warm weather events are actually easier to tie to climate change. And so the other problem that happened in the hill country in Texas is this business of the Balcony escarpment, where the air mass got lifted. So it spread out and the rain came down even faster. But it'll happen again, to your point. And everybody's talked about this for years. And the technologies for warning systems exist. You know, where people have tidal or tsunami events, these sort of warning systems can be put up. But you got to get to higher ground very quickly. And the point that I believe was being made in the video a moment ago was the mass of the water. A 20-foot high mass of water in a half hour is you can't just float your way out of it. It knocks everything over. Everybody knows you pick up a bucket of water, you know how heavy it is. And you get a lot of water going that fast. So what are we going to do about it is the ancient question, and it would be to stop burning fossil fuels. When you're in a hole, stop digging, and so on. But the fossil fuel industry has been very successful in getting organizations like the U.S. Congress to think that it's really not happening.
Well, and the first 6 months of the Trump administration, we've seen an end to some of the federal efforts on not just fossil fuel, but other efforts that had been in place government-wide to promote alternative energy.
Yes, to be the world leader, to have the U.S. lead the world in renewable energy sources, so that we would be able to export our technologies, that people would want to come to the U.S. to learn how to do this stuff and so on. So the opportunities still exist, but we do need to turn things around. And this is, of course, you're getting my side of the story.
Well, I mean, it's the science side.
Yeah, well, yeah. And you know, I'm a big fan of this, everybody.
Oh, yeah?
The U.S. Constitution, Article 1. I like to show this to people. Article 1, Section 8. Article 1's the legislative branch, Congress. Section 8 is the miscellany, letters of marque about piracy, and the progress of science and useful arts. The word science is in the U.S. Constitution.
Guess what? We even have a graphic made so that the people at home can read that small print, so you can read it again.
But I mention it because these guys in 1787 realized the value of science for our health, our welfare, and our international competitiveness. It's not a new idea. And so to set science aside is not in anyone's best interest. And so I spent the morning on Capitol Hill in Lindsey Graham's office, Ted Cruz's office, and then Adam Schiff's office. So these are two very conservative guys, one very progressive guy, and everybody shares the idea that NASA is the best brand the United States has.
Let's talk about that because, as you said, you're here to lobby on behalf of...
Well, we don't lobby. That's a legal
Sorry.
word. We're advocating.
To talk to people who make decisions in their offices about proposed cuts to NASA.
Yeah. Really, I mean, extraordinary cuts. I mean, cut in half kind of thing.
I just want to say that your organization, the Planetary Society, created a visual, which we can also put on the screen, of the cuts, the most since 1961, and that was before an American astronaut went into space.
Yeah, the cuts proposed are really extraordinary and, if I may, out of this world. And where exactly the proposals come from is not clear to anybody that we spoke with this morning, but everybody's dealing with it, and they're trying to make these cuts to existing programs, existing missions. And missions, everybody, is a big word that includes the spacecraft and all the people on the ground that are running around maintaining it.
So you're saying that nobody sort of claimed authorship of the cuts?
That we spoke with this morning who had knowledge or said they had knowledge.
Do you think you're going to be successful in getting the money back in?
Well, they're trying. So these are very conservative politicians who are trying to put money back in. And they'll be, right now, it looks like it'll work. But it's very wonky, Dan. I mean, it's the authorization versus appropriations versus the reconciliation versus...
Welcome to Washington.
Yeah. So just everybody, your tax dollars at work. It is there's many traditions where these people reach agreements. But what's been happening, as far as we can tell, is the executive branch has been trying to go around the long traditions of the legislative branch.
That's what Elon Musk, who certainly likes science and likes space, was
everybody
working
keep
on
in
cuts.
mind, NASA is a big customer for SpaceX.
Yeah.
I mean, they're related. It's not one thing or it's not one or the other.
Before I let you go, and you've been very generous with your time, I know that you were receiving a lot of texts from the HHS Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. Trying to convince you the science of connecting autism to vaccines, which you can tell me about the science there, to the point where you had to block him?
Well, I mean, you guys, everybody, texts take up your phone time. He was relentless, page after page after page. So this year, as you may know, is the 41st anniversary of Spinal Tap. And there's posters. Spinal Tap is a movie, everybody. It holds up. We watched it last year. It's good. But the first drummer that explodes is Ed Begley. I don't want to give too much away. He lived down the street from me. And he knew Bobby Kennedy Jr. when the two of them were very involved in environmental issues.
Yeah.
So that's how I started getting texts from Mr. Kennedy.
Real quick, because we're out of time. I assume you tried to
I just told him he's confused causation with correlation. The same old problem. Just because somebody got a vaccination and then somebody else got autism doesn't mean one caused the other. This is science. This is a long time. So that is, Mr. Kennedy's views have been debunked up and down. But I think, respectfully, the president likes things to be chaotic. So he hires people who are controversial on purpose, and here we are.
Bill Nye, it's always good to see you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you
it's
for
great
being
to be
here.
Keep up the good work. First Amendment, keep it going.
Yeah.
When you announced that you were not going to be running for re-election, your statement said in part that too many legislators on Capitol Hill don't understand the consequences that policies that they enact could have on that young adult living in a trailer park struggling to make ends meet.
Yep.
You were that young adult. at that one point. I don't know how many people here know that about you, that you come from humble circumstances. But how important was that to your decision to vote against?
Yeah, it's because really understand. Well, first off, I was a partner at Price Waterhouse. I've been trained in implementation. My entire career was working with big companies, taking complex things and operationalizing them. So when we looked at this Medicaid, the Senate mark, the House mark was fine. It was just clear to me it was not thought out. And I really did think about it, like the tax policy, the same thing. In fact, my mother's in Nashville. I'll be headed back this weekend. I'm going to stop by that trailer park. It's still on Richards Road in Antioch. And I lived on Waikiki Boulevard when I lived with my family there. It had previously been called Hawaiian Village. It was Countryside Village. And then I had a trailer when I moved out of home. I left the trailer park for about a year, and then I moved into one on Sugarcane Lane. But I thought about going back into there and asking them how they thought about the consequences of this policy. I'll give you a good example to give you an idea of how that does shape my understanding or my view of policy. The no tax on tips. So when I was living in that trailer on Waikiki Boulevard with my family, and I was still going to high school, I became a waiter at a restaurant that was kind of like a Denny's, a highway restaurant. And I made good money because as a male waiting tables back in the 76.
And this is before there were taxes on tips, right?
Yeah, right.
They were enacted in '82 by
right.
Bob Dole.
So, I was, and it was all cash tips anyway. I'm a 16-year-old kid. Do you really think I'm going to declare this for my taxes anyway? I mean,
right.
My gosh, let's be real. So, but 3 years later, I'm not on Waikiki Boulevard. I'm now on Sugarcane Lane in that same trailer park, and I'm a warehouse worker. This is just after I'd graduated high school. I was supposed to go off to the Air Force, had a car accident, found myself without any college prospects for a while after thinking I was going to go to OCS training in the Air Force. But now I'm a warehouse worker. Now, over the span of 3 years, living in that same trailer park, Tom Tillis, the waiter, gets a tax brace, but Tom Tillis, the warehouse worker, doesn't. So it's just inherently unfair. If you really are trying to have an impact on them, then why don't you have a policy that's instructed by all of the circumstances in that trailer park? And similarly, I'm sure that there are a lot of people that are Medicaid eligible in that trailer park today. The one footnote is, Jelly Roll, the country music singer, he grew up in that trailer park too, about 20 years removed. I found that out when I asked him questions in a hearing up here. But yeah, I do look at where I came from, and I try to always think in terms of how does it affect people that are on that bubble too.
And when you had your conversations with President Trump on text and in the phone, you were telling him that you thought his advisors were not giving him the full truth about what the Senate bill would do.
Absolutely. And I've told the president a number of times that I very seldom believe I've ever disagreed with him. But I have disagreed with bad advice that some of his advisors are giving him, whether it's on a nominee or whether it's on policy. I told the president that the House mark was great. The House mark dealt with work requirements, saved $800 billion. There's only a $200 billion delta between the Senate mark, which was largely requested by staff in the White House. It wasn't the brainchild of any one member that I can find here, but it does so much damage. It just wasn't thought through. And hopefully we can convince them that we have to fix it. And that we can either fix it with a bipartisan bill coming up or the ACA extensions or some way we need to fix it. Otherwise, I told the president, I really do believe it could be his Obamacare.
Because of the promise that he made that was not true, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor.
And now it's like, if you like Medicaid and you're eligible, you can keep it. That's fundamentally untrue because the funding mechanisms are probably going to take people who are eligible for it off of it over time, or it's going to create an enormous unfunded mandate on the states in a time frame that they can't absorb. In North Carolina, the estimate is nearly $26 billion over 10 years. Now, people say, well, we've delayed it for a year. I said, the numbers are still the same. It's a 10-year hit. But and then pretending like it won't have political consequences.
Do you think the people in that trailer park, do you think that they understand what's in that bill and how it could impact them?
They don't, but they will. They'll be targeted, and they should be. I mean, if I were
Targeted politically, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, they will find a way in today's world. You can find those folks, and if you're a competent Democrat, you're going to figure out a way to communicate to them how that affects their lives, and it almost certainly will. If it's that trailer park or the one that I spent a little bit of time in Jacksonville, Florida, or challenge communities across the country, that was the point. The House bill I had no problem with. And I actually had sympathy with some of our dead hawks, of which I am one, to say I think we should cut more. I think we should find $200 billion more in savings for $1 trillion, just not in this way, because it's not sustainable and it's politically, I think it's politically just devastating.
When you told that to the president, what did he say?
I think he probably heard it, maybe resonated with it. I was told by more than one person that he preferred the House bill more, but there's no question the Democrats are going to say that he broke his promise and that Medicaid recipients are going to be at risk. But he's got people that are giving him bad advice that are around him every day, and I continue to say, look, you got people here. I have a vested interest in making sure that President Trump's the most successful Republican president in the history of this country. I was a Republican long before President Trump was, and I'll be a Republican for the rest of my life. I built a majority in North Carolina. I want to see that that successful streak and all the benefits that have occurred in North Carolina occur and continue. And so you have to be able to tell truth to power. That's our job. And that's exactly what I attempted to do last week, and that's what I'll continue to do. And I'll continue to work with the president if he chooses to. I'm a transaction guy. Completely believe they missed the mark on this one. His advisors got it wrong. Off to the next transaction. Let's fix this or work on something else. There are plenty of things where we agree.
The Wall Street Journal reported that when he made his final pitch to you, you said, I can't effing do that.
No, it sounds like me, but I don't remember the conversation at that level of granularity. But I made it very clear to the president and I have never had a pitched discussion. Every time, and I've probably done it more than many, every time I'm very frank with him, but he has never been untoward, never raised his voice.
He just goes on social media and does it.
Yeah, well, that's the first time he ever did. And so after he did that, after I told the president that he's clearly got the votes, that I will try and work to get something done in the House. He didn't need my vote, and that I would be respectful and quiet and try to do my work on the House side. And then I got that text that I texted him, or I saw I'd never read it, but I saw like the first sentence. I told the president in another text, I said, now it's time to start looking for my replacement because I don't deal with that kind of bullshit.
Mm-hmm. And what did he say to that?
He texted back, I am, and I think subsequent to that, he started taking interviews. He needs to, because it's going to be a tough race in North Carolina. We got to get a good candidate, and I'm committed to helping the president get that candidate elected. If it's not, well, let's say a handful of people that will never make it in a general election in North Carolina.
Yeah, well, you've talked about the lieutenant governor, the former lieutenant governor, Mark Robinson, who has a lot of baggage, a lot of weird stuff.
He's still got Mini Soldier out there. For
Mini Soldier, his porn
Come on,
avatar name or whatever, allegedly. President Trump endorsed him last time, loved him. He's very pro-Trump. What happens if Trump gets behind him?
I think it'd be devastating. And if you noticed, before the revelations of Mini Soldier and everything came out, Mark Robinson was not on the stage any longer. So I think the president probably got the right intel that it was not a good idea to call him Martin Luther King ×2. He is a disgrace to Martin Luther King's legacy. And there's no way if he became the nominee in North Carolina, I could possibly support him. Of course, I wouldn't support the Democrat nominee. I would just have to take a pass.
What if it were Laura Trump? There's talk of her running.
They've all got to decide. You know, our state is very difficult for Republicans to win. In both cases, I've won by fewer than 2 points. So they need to be really smart about the name on the ballot and the profile on the ballot to have an opportunity to win. It would have been a very difficult race for me. You know, Jake, you've been following elections a lot longer than I have. On election day, I've never been closer than 2 points behind my opponent, and we pulled it out in both cases. But this is going to be a tough race for someone. They need a good, solid business, right-of-center conservative to match up against whoever it is, and now it looks like it may be Governor Cooper.
Governor Cooper, who's pretty popular, two-term governor, managed to have a decent profile in North Carolina and leave the state pretty popular.
Yeah.
You were talking about the difficulties of being a Republican in this era. A columnist in the Carolina Journal wrote about you. Tillis has been one of the few elected officials on Capitol Hill in recent years who has demonstrated a willingness to stand up for the legislative branch. The story surrounding his departure from Congress is unlikely to encourage others to step into that role.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a good example last week, and let's, before we start, I have to say the Democrats have a far worse rap sheet than Republicans when it comes to defending this institution. I only have to point to nuking the filibuster and thank God that we had Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema there to save the chamber.
No longer here.
No, and these folks now are using as a litmus test for primaries, would you nuke the filibuster? But now Republicans are starting to take that bait. I am here to defend the Article 1 branch and to collaborate with the Article 2 branch, more so when there's a Republican in there, maybe a little less so when there's a Democrat, but still I've managed to do bipartisan work when Biden was in office. But at the end of the day, I'm an institutionalist, and it's remarkable to me how I hear all these self-avowed institutionalists rationalize why they wouldn't vote for the amendment last week for John Kennedy to simply say, if we're going to give the president $1 billion a year to spend on defense production, shouldn't there actually be a consultation with Congress before it's spent? And we had dozens of our members vote against it because the president rightfully wanted it. So I don't mind the tug and pull. I think the president would be wrong if he wasn't trying to make his branch as powerful as possible. By the same token, it's our job to maintain the historic intent of the Article 1 branch.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to be dogmatic about that because I really believe that it's what has made this country so special.
Do you think that the lesson for the Republican Party right now is fall in line behind President Trump or get out of Congress?
No, look, I made a personal decision that it wasn't an in the moment decision.
You had made the decision before all this happened with the bill.
I started a process of what I described to many of my donors and supporters of confirmatory due diligence back in January and February when I said I've got to convince myself that this transaction of being involved in the most expensive race in U.S. history again, that it's worth doing and that there is a path to winning. And I felt like I needed to determine whether or not I could raise the money that was necessary for my campaign. I needed to determine if we were going to have a going concern in terms of governing over a reasonable period of time so that I could then determine if the environment of the election, if those two things were in place, knowing that it was likely going to be a negative environment because of the historic trend of the party in power in the White House having headwinds, then I was going to make a decision probably more in the September timeframe. But it just seemed like in the moment, I don't feel like what we passed out last week had any semblance of good governance. It was an artificial deadline created by some staffer in the White House who probably wanted the signature to happen while the rockets' red glare were bursting in air, that vision on July 4th. There was nothing in that deadline that had anything to do with a Senate priority. I have said, look, we could have probably taken 10 days and fixed this bill and had the president have a highly successful bill. But you got staff over there that are so obsessed with making the date that they don't care about the outcome. They just care about checking the box. And that's what I've continued to tell the president he needs to be wary of.
I'm sure that your supporters and your donors and your constituents, some of them said, this is exactly why you need to run for re-election, because you are willing to stand up for the legislative branch. And even though you are very conservative, you are willing to work in a bipartisan way to get stuff done.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
I felt like in the moment that I wanted to take off the table any question whatsoever about whether or not my reelection prospects had anything to do with how I make decisions here. I've been trying to tell people that for the last 10 years. Look, I got a wonderful life and a wonderful family and lots of professional options before I started this job, and I'm going to have them after I started this job. But I want to make it very clear, if you want to try and flex on me and make it look like my reelection prospects are at risk. I want to make it clear that that's not anything I care about. I care about good policy, and I care about the future of this country. And I thought taking that off the table for the next year and a half may put me in a better position to help govern and help encourage other members to stand up for our branch and for good policy and absolutely support President Trump.
But that flexing,
but on our terms.
That flexing was not coming from Roy Cooper and Josh Stein. That flexing was coming from Trump and the MAGA forces who were
more the MAGA forces. Again, I don't have a problem with President Trump.
Right.
I got a problem with some of the people I consider to be amateurs advising him.
What do you make when you go on
and
social?
So I want to make it very clear to them guys, when you act like the president, when he's out of the room, you don't impress me. And they'll hear more of that in the coming months.
Who are you talking about specifically? Stephen Miller?
We'll get to that.
What is it like? I don't know how much you go on social media. Oh, look, you got your grandkids on your socks.
Yeah, that's all three of them right there.
We'll get a close-up of that later. What do you make of, I don't know how often you go on social media and for your own mental sanity,
Never.
I hope it's never, but when people call you a rhino, a Republican in name only, even though you are obviously very conservative, though willing to work with Democrats and also willing to stand up for the legislative branch, what do you make of that criticism?
I tell them, I agree I'm a rhino, I've just got a different take on it. I'm a Republican in need of outcomes. And the thing that most of these so-called true conservatives have in common, whether they're elected or party leaders, they've never legislated. They haven't scratched the surface of what I've been responsible for real meaningful Second Amendment bills, for property rights reform, for pro-life movements. So they can spare me the amateurish view of how this world works because they don't have a body of work to point to. I do. And so if they want to call me a rhino, then go ask themselves, what advances did we make on so many conservative issues when I was Speaker? And what have we done here on spending or on conservative legislation that's hit the president's desk that some people is bipartisan, but it's fundamentally sound conservative legislation? I don't apologize for my body of work. I've run on it in multiple primaries, and I've won every one of them.
You mentioned earlier that you thought President Trump was getting bad advice, not just about this bill, but also maybe about some of his nominees. You ultimately voted for both RFK Jr. for HHS Secretary and Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary, even though your vote was not guaranteed until the end there. Do you regret those votes now that you've seen them in office?
Well, first, I need to set the record straight on Hegseth. I had already informed my conference that I was going to defer to the Senate Armed Services vote. If he got a unanimous vote out of Senate Armed Services, then I was going to defer to them. I was on that committee for several Congresses. But then there was that allegation that came out on that Sunday. It was net new information. I complete my due diligence. And so I interviewed a number of people. I was called over to the White House on the Thursday night asking me to vote for them. I said, I may. The vote's not till tomorrow. I've still got to complete my due diligence. And quite honestly, there were conversations that I had on Friday that made me put this allegation in the same category as the other ones that I'd worked on before he was confirmed. Now,
this had to do with abusive tactics towards women? Or towards,
that's right.
Yeah.
But what it came down to is, honestly, there was never an example of an eyewitness corroborated account. And I had to be fair to Pete Hegseth on that issue. Now, with the passing of time, I think it's clear he's out of his depth as a manager of a large, complex organization.
Yeah, what was your reaction to the Signalgate situation?
Well, that's just one. I mean, this whole idea of having a pause in Ukraine defensive arms, that's just amateurish. I mean, that's from somebody who doesn't understand large organization dynamics. So, I don't regret the decision I made back then based on the facts as I knew them then. But today I am beginning to wonder if maybe Armed Services was a little bit generous with respect to their assessment of his capabilities as a manager of the world's largest, most complex, and arguably consequential organization.
So you don't regret it, but if you had to do it again today, you probably wouldn't vote yes?
I think based on the information I have today, if all I had was the information on the day of the vote, I'd certainly vote for him again. But now I have the information of him being a manager, and I don't think that his probationary period's been very positive.
What about RFK Jr.? Because he's obviously gone back on a lot of the promises he made to your colleague, Senator and Dr. Cassidy, about vaccines.
I think that will be something that we'll take up. I defer a lot to Bill Cassidy on that. He's a brilliant man. And I consulted with Bill. Quite honestly, if the main reason I supported Kennedy was because Bill Cassidy thought that we should see how it plays out. And one thing I will say throughout this whole process is I'm thoroughly impressed with Mehmet Oz. I believe that he's quite capable and running a very important part in CMS.
You also aroused the president's ire when you made it clear that you were not going to support Ed Martin to be U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. The president took the note and just made him the pardon attorney at the Justice Department. What have you thought about how he's been there?
I couldn't care less about what he's doing in the Justice Department. What I cared about was having him be the key prosecutor in the district where he excused what happened to these police officers on January the 6th. It was just disqualifying. I mean, he literally was excusing some of the behavior of people who entered the building. I still call those people who got pardoned by the president thugs. There are about 200 or 300 people that should be behind bars now for what they did on January the 6th. I do agree with Martin that there were people that in the heat of the moment, they got more prosecution and more devastating consequences than they probably deserved. But at the end of the day, folks, we got to treat you like an adult or a child. You decide which one you want to be. You walk into a beaten and battered Capitol and you see police officers being wrestled to the ground and you don't think you're in a bad situation, you should probably think twice. So there should have been a consequence for them, maybe over prosecution. But where Martin missed it with me is saying that there was all of them had been over prosecuted, and then all of them had a reasonable basis for their frustration.
What do you
Absolutely
say? What do you say to somebody who says that you seem to let President Trump off the hook for a lot of these things? Because Trump is after all, the one that pardoned all those people that you're talking about, and you're the first Republican I've seen make the connection between the thin blue line, make the connection between back the blue, and what happened January 6th.
Jake,
a lot of Republicans don't want to talk about that.
I went to the Senate. I walked around this building for a week telling every one of these Capitol Police officers who are professionals, keeping their emotions clear. I said, what the president did sucked, and I want you to know it. And then I got to thinking, I probably should elevate that by going to the floor and saying the same thing, and I did that. And I think I have a number of members here who disagreed with the pardons who didn't. So this is, it's something that I went and feel very strongly about.
Yeah.
I mean, I was here. I was the last member out of the chamber on January 6th. I saw everything unfold, and I'm still angry about it. And I have no tolerance for anyone. The president should know if there is anyone coming up for a nomination through any committee of my jurisdiction that excused January the 6th, that they're not going to get confirmed in my remaining tenure in the U.S. Senate.
I want to ask you about the flooding, because obviously Texas is dealing with that today. Last year, flooding from Hurricane Helene caused at least 108 storm-related deaths.
In North Carolina alone, over 250
Yeah,
overall.
but North Carolina alone, and many areas, as you know, are still struggling to recover. This year, the Trump administration has made cuts, wants to get rid of FEMA, has done job freezes when it comes to the National Weather Service, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Association, et cetera. Can states manage these disasters effectively without the help that has traditionally come from the federal government?
Last night, I was talking with two linemen that we recognized for their heroic work, trying to get power reestablished to the Veterans Hospital out in Western North Carolina. And I was also talking with two disaster response coordinators who were a part of that. And I said, can y'all imagine if all of a sudden we've got a storm forming off of Africa coming this way, maybe it's moving over, it's a Category 1, that the southeastern states are going to have to get together and do paper, scissors, rock to see who's going to manage this regional impact. I mean, the last time I checked, storms have a really bad habit of crossing state and county jurisdictions.
They don't care whose congressional district it is.
To me, anybody that's advising the president we should get rid of FEMA has clearly had no experience with disaster response. We have a lot of experience with disaster response in the Southeast. We've got a number of recommendations to modernize FEMA, to shift more responsibility down, but the federal government has to be the convening authority. I mean, FEMA was actually, its birth was out of a disastrous response in the past. But if we're talking about changing the execution, that's fine, but the federal government has to play a role. There are no major storms that you could possibly have a coordinated, solid response to if it's a pickup game by states.
Right.
And so it's just absurd. Whoever recommended that clearly is out of their depth on disaster response.
President Trump went after you while you guys were fighting about that. He said, Tom Tillis has hurt the great people of North Carolina. Even on the catastrophic flooding, nothing was done to help until I took office. Then a miracle took place. Tillis is a talker and a complainer, not a doer.
Well, President, I get to Western North Carolina and see if his view of the work that I've done there fits with the view of Western North Carolinians. I think that they're pretty happy with how much I leaned into it, even advising the Trump campaign to probably not land in Asheville during the campaign when we were trying to use the airport to evac victims. So I will agree to disagree on that one.
What is the future of the Republican Party? And to a lesser extent, I'm interested in your your take on the Democratic Party, because there are a lot of people out there who think that both parties right now are completely adrift. One of them happens to be in power, so it seems less so because they are in charge. But are you worried about the Republican Party?
I am. I think the good news is the Democratic Party is going so. I'm glad that they're yielding to their instincts because they're bad, and they're going far left. I mean, you've got basically a socialist Democrat. I think that's code for almost communist when you're talking about taking over means of production, running for New York mayor.
Not just running, he's the Democratic nominee. Yeah.
So I think our hope, I think that the Republicans can seize this moment to be the practical party, to be the party that's solidly conservative, while these litmus tests for how liberal you are to get out of a Democratic primary continue. If the Republicans do that, we get what I'm worried about is a leader on the Democratic side saying this stuff is killing us. If they do that and they become the party that's more likely looking like left of center, that becomes a real problem for swing states. But the good news is right now, the inmates are running their asylum, and this gives us an opportunity to really come together.
What does the Republican Party need to do to get its message right? Less fealty to one man?
I have fealty to ideals. I don't have fealty to any one man. And I do believe that we're doing the president a disservice. President Trump, nor any president, could possibly be expected to have a detailed understanding of all the things that they have to deal with. What the president needs to do is start really looking at the outcome of some of these policy decisions and ask himself, is he really getting the best professional advice? That's what I've been trying to provide him for the last few years, and that's what I'm going to continue to provide him. And it's worth what he paid for it. But as somebody who's been in elected office for 20 years at the leadership level in the State House and doing all I can up here, I hope that he starts listening to more of us and fewer of those people who pretend like they're the president when he's out of the room over in the White House.
Who are you talking about?
There will be plenty of time for me to cover that later.
Not later in this interview.
Right.
There was a 2013 profile of you in Charlotte magazine. It talked about your dad. It was a boat draftsman.
Yeah.
And one job brought your family to Louisiana.
New Orleans, West Wego.
And the profile says that's where your work ethic went into overdrive. You started looking for creative ways to earn money. You walked cats in exchange for cash or biscuits.
It's true.
So that's the first chapter.
It was Miss Wright. To me, it's all about income. And I mean, I was 8 years old at that time, and I had walking around money. As a matter of fact, I remember, I don't know, some of that money that I raised, I also went to a 7-Eleven and bought an engagement ring for a girlfriend I had when I was 9 years old.
So if that's your first chapter, walking cats for biscuits, what's the next chapter going to be for you after you leave? I know we get another year and a half of you here in D.C., but what's after that?
I think probably I still love technology. I spent my entire career in technology and then enterprise transformation as a partner at PW, at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and IBM. And I love execution. Honestly, I finally got my 4-year degree, but I was admitted to the partnership at Pricewaterhouse a year before I got it. And that was mainly because I'm fairly good at execution. I want to go back and do some of that. I like getting my hands dirty. I'd love to do turnaround work for problem businesses or startups.
In terms of the next year and a half, how are you going to turn around this institution here? How are you going to make it more responsive to the American people?
I'm going to keep on working and trying to make it very clear to the president. I've never done anything that I thought knowingly would undercut him. Everything I've ever done has been to improve the outcome. And so I'm going to work on that. And I am going to hold some of these people accountable who I think are shielding him, do not understand the legislative process, certainly do not understand execution, and they're the biggest risk to his legacy. And if we don't get it right, as I told the president, if we don't get this right, then he's probably going to have two of the most miserable years of his life if the Democrats take the gavels in the House. And I'm trying to avoid that.
All right. Senator Thom Tillis, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Republican Senator Thom Tillis.
All right. If you're still here, God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. It is your boy Genesis. Welcome to the Genesis Show. It is currently 10:21 a.m. and of course today's date is the 10th of July 2025. God bless you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. And believe in Almighty God. God is the greatest. No matter what you're going through, stay true to yourself. And know that God is with you. No matter what you're going through, God is with you. All right. Stay strong. Do not throw in the towel just yet. Okay. Just believe God is your strength. Okay. And with that being said, America is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. Shout out to esteemed members, Ellie. Shout out to Dr. Luke the GOAT. Shout out to Ingram. Shout out to Sandra. Shout out to Ringmaster. And of course, our moderator for some reason. Oh, okay. We got Zyros in the building. Shout out to Zyros Guardian, man. God bless you. Yes, we've been streaming for about, I'll say 2-3 hours now. Actually, maybe, 3-4 hours now. It was going to be a quick stream, but we got on late around, say, 6 a.m., 6:30. Yeah, because, this is America, okay? You have to do what you got to do, okay? As long as you are following the law, you just got to do what you got to do. Stay up all night, do what you got to do. All right, with that being said, you guys stay strong, and shout out to our law enforcement officers. Shout out to the veterans and the military personnel. Yes, thank you for protecting the homeland. And I don't know if you guys watch tennis, but Wimbledon is being played right now, and the number one in the world, Sabalenka, she played yesterday, and now she's playing again today, semifinals. It's like, come on, give her a day of rest. But okay, I love tennis because my daughter plays tennis. She loves tennis. She's 5 years old, and she's looking to do great things in the tennis world. She's also a gymnast. She does gymnastics, but she loves tennis more. But with that being said, I do not know why Wimbledon did not give Sabalenka 1 day of rest. Jesus, come on, y'all. Come on, man. All right. With that being said, you guys be strong. God bless you guys. It is your boy Genesis, and I got to go. Okay. I gotta go. Love you guys. America is the greatest nation. See you guys soon. Love you.